Now the heroic Autobots have created the Dinobots. Slag, Sludge, Snarl, Grimlock, a brave prehistoric breed.
Evil Decepticons! Dinobots, transform!
Transformers, robots in disguise.
Somehow the Dinobots must stop the evil Decepticons. They must save Earth.
Transformers.
Robots in Disguise from Hasbro.
Great Scott, and welcome to the Triple Takeover Toycast, a fortnightly podcast dedicated to the Transformers as well as other toy lines from the past. I assure you, we will be doing a M.A.S.K episode. As always, I'm joined by a writer, photographer, and a man with more toy trains than a fat controller. It's TFsquareone, also known as M.A.S.K.
I am not being the fat controller for you. I'm just telling you that right now.
You put that top hat on.
That's amazing.
And it wouldn't be the same if we weren't blessed with the company of YouTuber, writer, photographer, and all-round final boss of social media. It's Sixo.
I'm still railing from fat control. I got off lightly.
We don't have to fit the meme stereotype of three people doing a podcast to the letter, guys. We don't have to all fit into the caricatures that they painted us into.
Au contraire.
Yeah, people are now picturing you with a little train set in your loft, you know, just JRX just going around.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, you saying that's not how it is?
What, did you see the photos on social media of Rick Lords having his Transformers Tyco train set with JRX dotted around it? Mate, that looked like the time of my life right there.
I need that mat. I now need that mat.
That was amazing. Really amazing.
Today's episode don't take money. It don't take fame. It don't need no credit card to ride this Astro train. But it might just save your life. That's the power of episode 13. So join us as we hop into the DeLorean and floor it to 88 miles an hour and go back in time to 1985.
Very nice.
Lovely.
Very nice.
He's up to it again, isn't he?
I try. I was worried coming in tonight because I was like, oh man, I haven't got anything. And then a few minutes later, it was like, oh, there we go.
Now, hang on a minute. Mr. Host, who are you and which different professional or tradesman calls you something this week? Like, I've been sitting here waiting for this.
Oh my God. I totally forgot to do it, didn't I?
Yeah, what does your chiropodist call you?
I can't even remember who it was this week. Oh, hang on. Let me check. Who did I have?
Is it a spreadsheet? Do you have a spreadsheet for all the people that you that call you Liam?
Your greengrocer?
No, I think it was my PE teacher. I think that's what I was going to go with.
Why are you still seeing your PE teacher?
You know, it drives past every now and again. And this week, we've actually got our very first sponsor, haven't we, guys? It's TF Sauce.
Yeah, so a bit of an update for the old podcast, because moving forward, we have taken on a sponsor, which we felt was quite an important and possibly necessary thing to do in order for us to keep going.
I think it's an important thing to mention that, you know, this is something we do in extra time for us outside of our normal responsibilities. And while we do have an absolute blast doing it, we do want to make it as good as it can be. And also, as we introduced Patreon at the last episode, we also want to be able to actually provide as much content as we can. So having the support of a sponsor, having any support for a project like this is really important to its long-term survival, improvement, evolution. And actually, I think TF Sauce are a terrific sponsor for us to have. You know, both Sixo and I have and do still write articles for TF Sauce, and it's always been the kind of sponsor that have just, at least in my case, they've always said to me, write what you want. As long as you're enthusiastic, just bring the content that you want, do it your way, say what you want, photograph it the way you want, and just we want content. So they've always been supportive of like photographic, written, video content. It makes total sense for them to also have like to support a podcast like this.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly second that. I mean, one thing I've loved about working with TF Sauce is that genuinely at no point have they ever put any kind of stipulation on any of the work that I've done for them. They've never said that they want me to say a particular thing. They've never said that I have to be, have any kind of opinion or express any kind of opinion about a particular toy or anything like that. And that's really good, because ultimately you want to write from the heart. You want to be honest about what you're saying. And, I think the fact that they're just happy to support content like this and all of the other stuff that we do being made is fabulous. So, yeah, it's definitely a good fit for us.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone else would ever have actually supported me in writing a full article about differences in copyright stampings on Diaclone Mirages. Not really sure everyone would have been on board with that. But, I felt it was important to have that out there, and they supported it. So, please, guys, do check out tfsource.com, because they don't just, stock Masterpiece, third-party, Generations, current figures. There's also vintage figures, and that's not just G1. It's everything from Beast Wars to Unicron Trilogy, Takara versions as well. This stuff sells out fast as well on their website, so make sure you check it out. And one thing we actually decided to do with the sponsor segments was to keep it as triple takeover as possible. So instead of just making it about go to the website, buy this, look at that, what we're going to kind of do is we're going to do it in our style. So we'll look at the website every episode, and we'll pick maybe one or two items that have just come into stock, and we'll apply the triple takeover filter to it. And hopefully you'll find that as entertaining as we will.
Does that mean we're going to call it what Sixo buying this week? Is that what the segment's going to be? What?
No, I think that's just the website in general. So
very good, Liam. Very good. I'm sure there'll be something to say about Old Kingdom Galvatron and whatever other children's toys you're buying along the way as well.
Hey, look, that's not a children's toy. I almost lost a thumb. Damn it.
I'm only kidding. Of course I am. But there'll be plenty to say. There are a couple of items actually that they've got coming up in stock that I've got my eye on. But yeah, more on that later, of course.
Okay, so Maz, what have you been buying this week? And how much Car Robots is it?
I've virtually bought all of Car Robots. But, I really wish it was that way actually, but it has been like 2 to 3 big figures per month. So there's still like loads of stuff I'm looking at, like Build King, and I don't even have the Megatron in hand or anything like that. I'm just like, that's next month. And so it's an ongoing thing. But yeah, it's definitely a lot more trains and spy changes around here than there was a month ago.
That's no bad thing. Trains and spy changes are pretty awesome.
No complaints.
Yeah, indeed.
How incredible has it been for you to sort of discover that line then? Some of those toys for the first time?
Not to spoil the upcoming episode on it, but I'm having the time of my life. I'm not even kidding.
Ooh, you're getting a bit dirty dancing, are we?
Oh my God.
I have often described you as the Swayze of the podcast, so,
Oh, I'll take that over Fat Controller.
So, but there's been some tragedy as well, hasn't there? I didn't want to bring it up, but I feel like we've got to talk about it.
Yes, Godfire Convoy's head. Yeah, and that was a wonderful experience putting that all together, following the instructions, just had them all out, I was taking photos at every step. Last thing you need to do is flip out the massive Omega Prime Godfire Convoy head. And it got a little jammed, and I just thought, okay, we'll just need to press it a bit more. Maybe it's just like Optimus Prime, G1 Optimus Prime's head on the flipping head plate that just sometimes gets a bit tight, but it just snapped clean off because the rotating hinges just didn't have clearance to turn that last bit, and I didn't know about it, so it's 50% on the toy, 50% on me. But have to give huge thanks to Hellscream on Twitter, who just basically offered up an RID head plate and said, you can just have this. And he's going to send it to me, and he showed me how to disassemble it as well. So I should have a fully functional, non-faulty Godfire Convoy again within a couple of weeks, max.
That's really cool of him. Yeah.
Yeah. That's this community in a nutshell.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. That's lovely.
So guys, 1985, we were all very little at this age. I don't remember it. Sixo doesn't remember it. I don't think you remember it, do you, Maz?
Just the end of 1985, when I got my G1 Starscream, my first toy. Like I said in the 1984 episode, I think that's pretty much my earliest memory of Transformers, and that must have been 1985.
So yeah, it's the second year of the toy line as well, isn't it? So we've already covered 84 in a previous episode, but 85 is where it actually gets really big, isn't it? Everything sort of just giant sizes from here.
Yeah, I mean, and of course in Japan it was the first year of the toy line, so they launched Series 1 and Series 2 together in Japan in 1985 Takara, and obviously it was other stuff going on in Europe as well. Milton Bradley were releasing G1 Transformers in their boxes, what they could, because some of it was licensed to Seiji Justra Diaclone, so they weren't allowed to do some figures until they bought that license, and then they started putting them into their packaging and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's kickoff time basically.
Yeah, I think what's kind of interesting about 85 for me is that by this point, isn't it, but just become such a roaring success that actually they were kind of, if anything, struggling to kind of keep up with the level of product that was required for shelves and things like that. So hence why 85 itself, in terms of a toy line, is just such an interesting year.
And that's like a theme of the whole thing, isn't it? Is them struggling to keep up and just ever expanding with this 85. And yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the Japanese G1 as well. They did put in both years of the toy line. I'm right, aren't I? It is 84 and 85 were released in 85 in Japan.
Right, yeah. So, with their numbering system, they started with 01, 02, 03. So 01 is
That's
Convoy.
where I get it from.
Not that again.
Call back to episode 12. So 01 is Convoy, Optimus Prime. And then 05 is Alert, which is Red Alert. So they weren't even numbering them based on here are the first series guys and here are the second series guys. It was just, straight up like that. And of course in Japan, it was a little bit different. Like that early literature from Takara had a few very interesting differences to the Hasbro literature. For example, like White Astro Train was shown initially as an Autobot. So that was first advertised by Takara literature as being on the good guys. But then obviously, Hasbro did Astro Train as a Decepticon in very specific colors that were not TV. And then Takara released it in white, with the NASA livery. And then they updated that to the Hasbro livery. But yeah, so it was a fascinating time. I can't imagine how fascinating it must have been as someone maybe just in the late teens or 20s who maybe was into this toy line and buying them off shelves in 85. And if they just traveled remotely with this kind of hobby, what they would have found in other parts of the world if they were paying attention.
I think that, again, though, that comes back to that theme of them not doing it on the fly so much, although actually it does feel a little bit like that, because you can see, there are so many pictures of prototypes and things that still exist on those boxes at this point. I'm talking like red-headed Perceptors and, differently, like the Blue Swoop and all of that kind of stuff. There are so many indications that they were kind of doing it as fast as they could to just kind of get products out and things like that. They're still doing it, it's still great, don't get me wrong, it's still really good, but they were literally striking licensing deals as fast as they could, get stuff on the shelves. And I think you can really kind of see that. Hence, there are so many, as you said, so many kind of little variants, little curios about how it all kind of came to be. Even stuff like the Astro Train kind of feels like it was something that, like now, you would have Hasbro and Takara making these joint decisions, both putting out the same deco, certainly these days anyway, until recently, there may have been changes, but it's a lot more joined up. But then it just felt like, oh, you've done that? We did this. Oh, God, what do we do now? And it's really kind of, I don't know. I'm assuming obviously no email communication and all of that back then as well. It must have been, I guess, a little bit haphazard in its way. I don't know.
I don't think there's any year of G1 that demonstrates more regional variations than 1985. It is by far, I think, right up there with, Canada was different to the US. The UK was different to mainland Europe. Japan was different to anything else in Asia. So in 1985, it was a wild scene. It was the Wild West in terms of what you'd get with G1 Transformers, depending on where you were buying them.
This is near the end of that, though, isn't it? It's sort of from after here where things start to solidify a lot, isn't it? Like Italy was peddling a lot of the Diaclone toys, wasn't it, under different branding for the first few years, and then didn't they all?
Not just Italy. Yeah, even countries like France and Germany and Netherlands, Belgium. And even some Scandinavian countries, they would have had Justra Diaclone product on the shelf at the same time as G1 Transformers, especially late 1984, very early 1985. Italy had the Transformer branding by Gig or Gigi, I think is how you pronounce it. And yeah,
I was going to ask you how you pronounce that. Actually,
I think it's like GEG, like actually reading the letters out. But I'm happy to be corrected by that by anyone who grew up with it and can tell me concretely. But yeah, they had toys.
Yeah, I always thought it was Jig. I don't know why.
It might be because of the old toy line Jig or the old manufacturer Jig. It might have something to do with what the naming was there. But again, like open to being educated on that. But yeah, they had Bopper safety missiles, so they weren't neutering the missiles the way the UK Hasbro were doing for the UK and the US. But in order to keep the toys safe, they had these massive like rubber boppers on the end of the rockets that were being inserted into toys, and they would have had pre-transformers on the shelves as well at that time, like Powered Convoy, the Diaclone Ultra Magnus, that would have been on sale in Italy at that time, and even in France and Germany, that would have been on sale under Diaclone. And even in Japan, they still had Diaclone coming out in 1985. And actually, I think it's the 1985 Diaclones in Japan, which are the hardest to find, because at that point, they would have had Transformers on shelves big, like, people in Optimus Prime costumes and Megatron costumes in toy stores, totally brainwashing kids and them not seeing Diaclone anymore. I think that's a big thing in a number of countries that had pre-Transformers too.
I guess it's also fascinating to think that all of this is pre-movie, though, isn't it? Because it's
Right.
it's there's been no big screen adaptation of the Transformers at all at this point. I mean, we talked in a couple of episodes ago about how weird it is now to think of Transformers pre the 2007 film and what an impact that made. But actually, if anything, you're in like a real kind of eye of the storm at this point in '85, aren't you? Because everything's got onto the shelves, it's become big, but still the biggest is yet to come with '86. And just really fascinating year.
And if you think about the US, have any of you ever seen those newspaper clippings from 1984 where they talk about how there was this Christmas rush for 1984 for parents to get Transformers for kids, and like loads of places were just out of stock. You couldn't find an Optimus Prime. And of course, in 1985, virtually all of the season 1 toys were re-released. They were in assortments again for 1985, obviously with added rub signs and slight differences. So I think a lot of people would have received their first Transformers maybe in 1985, even the ones that they wanted from 1984.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, well, they were definitely more prevalent at this point, aren't they? Because this really is the moment when Hasbro really starts shoveling it all out, don't they? They are desperate at this point to capitalize on its success.
I think so.
Yeah, whereas the year before, they'd possibly been caught a little bit unaware with how popular it was going to be.
I think so. I think that's the case, yeah. And of course, like, many countries wouldn't have had Transformers in 1984.
No.
There's a lot of continuity between the 2 years as well, isn't there? Arguably more than, I guess, any other year, really, in Generation 1, to some degree anyway. And obviously a lot of that is the nature of a lot of the toys being still hand-me-downs from Diaclone. But, even stuff like Skids and all of that, which, we're going to get to, there was a lot of kind of crossover between the 2 years in many regards, wasn't there? And I think that, again, is this sense of get it out, get it on shelves, and it's all just kind of them rushing to get as much product out as possible. I think is
and
funny.
The best variants come from that rushing. So you've got the red Slag in Canada, which looks like the Slag on the box. And I think those early Dinobots had still got the 1984 mural on the back of the box. They hadn't been updated to the 1985 mural. So you'll find like the red Slag is in that box. And, the very fact that you got Transformers in Europe being released in Milton Bradley boxes, because Hasbro had to use Milton Bradley facilities to get toys out in that region because they hadn't established themselves to the point where they could mass release stuff as Hasbro Europe like they did in 1986. So you get them buying stock from Seiji Justra that was licensed from Takara as Diaclone, stuff like Red Tracks. And that Red Tracks in its styro just went straight into a Transformers Tracks box. And it's like, doesn't matter, it's Tracks, get it out.
Yeah, exactly.
And Sunstreaker goes into a Sideswipe box. It's like, doesn't matter, it's a Lambo, get it out. So the best variants come from this kind of thing.
That's the thing. And it's just the fact that this stuff is across the board for that year as well. These little mistakes, really, that then equal something utterly fascinating 30, 40 years later, becomes like a real want for collectors. If anything, it reminds me back to what we were saying when we were talking about packaging, and we were talking about what toys would you keep sealed now, if you were going to pick something up. And I think at the time we talked about stuff like Studio Series Hot Rod, and saying, actually, you really can't put any money on stuff like that becoming worth anything in the future because it's the obvious popular stuff. Whereas actually, if now you knew that they were putting stuff, like if they were putting, I don't know, a Studio Series Cup and a Studio Series Hot Rod box, and that was like a mistake, but there were a couple out there, then that would almost be the one to kind of look out for, if anything, although not to the same degree. But it's I don't know, it's just funny how that stuff happened at the time.
I still think people really cared about the Red Tracks, not just because it was a different color, it was because it was red on the back of the box in the 1985 art. That's why I think you get a group of Transformers enthusiasts who care about it rather than just Diaclone enthusiasts who care about it, or variant enthusiasts. It's like it has some sort of significance. Same as Blue Streak. The reason people really love that is because that's what was on the box. Because I definitely don't see as much passion for other Diaclone colors that didn't have any significance in Transformers. They're just oddities to people.
Yeah. Well, the red tracks I remember being fascinated by as a kid. Even as a kid, that was like, what is that? It's just a lot of that back of box stuff. Was just endlessly fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
It always made the world of the Transformers seem so different to the cartoon and the comics as well, because you had those color differences and the way they looked like the toys. It always just felt like you were looking at something different, like a different angle of fiction almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seemed more serious in a way. I don't know, like the cartoon seemed very cartoony to a large degree, even as a kid. But those back of box battles made it seem like this was a series with gravitas. I don't know. It felt like very, very alien and very cool and weird and just, I don't know. There was something about it. Something really about it.
Very populated as well.
Yeah. Even though it was like 5 hot rods in one picture or whatever. But
in 1986, yeah.
Yeah. I know it's the next year, but that's the ultimate one that always stands out to me. But even in 85, you've got like 3 Grimlocks, I think, on that picture. I forget. Yeah. I'd need to recount. I can't remember offhand.
I think it's 4. Is it 4?
Might be 4. There's one bit. I mean, it depends if you count. Obviously, there's one bit where he's transforming and he's been drawn multiple times, but he definitely crops up. He's in the background transforming. He's in the foreground. I think he's in the back right from memory. I'd need to look at it again. But kind of shooting someone. I think he's flying with some of the Dinobots as well in robot mode. So yeah, he's doing multiple things. That guy is really like doing the heavy lifting in that picture. But I don't know. I guess it was just a different interpretation, wasn't it, of the fiction, and that maybe you did get multiple versions of one character. I don't know.
It gives them personality as well, doesn't it? It imbues these things that aren't characters with a sense that they are a character that you don't know about, like a red tracks. You see that and you think it's something. The same like you're saying about Blue Street. When you see that art, it exists, and so it's like, why does that exist? It's not just like sometimes when you get just a different color of a toy, it's just a different color of a toy. But when you see that, it's something that triggers something in your imagination, and it makes you want to know what it is.
I remember looking at Diaclone paperwork of the pre-Omnibots. And Overdrive, the Ferrari, is depicted in yellow. And I just thought, oh, that's really cool. Is that something that exists? And, Diaclone paperwork shows them involved in this massive battle with the Warudas, with the alien invaders. So it's really action-packed. It's really dynamic. And you can tell there's a story there. And even though those toys weren't wholly sentient robots the way Transformers are, it's still, like you say, there's that artwork makes takes you, immerses you in the world, and then you kind of start thinking, what's that about, other than just like a catalog picture. Oh, there's that toy in a slightly different color. You don't look at it just on a toy level. No,
because they're participating in something, in an event, these characters are. So it feels like something important, and it is. Like you say, when you get those toys, a lot of time you're in the back of a car or a bus or something, and you're staring at that box all the way back, and that's where your mind is focused on. And so that's why it's so important.
So true. Yeah, I remember going with my dad to pick up my mum from college. It must have been 1986, I guess. And he had bought me a G1 Grapple on his way back from work. Apparently there was a toy store in Tottenham Court Road where he used to work. I can't remember if it was ABC or NBC, which particular one he was working when they had offices there in Tottenham Court Road in London, central London. And there was a toy store just around the corner from his offices. And he used to stop in there every now and then and bring Transformers home. That's where I got my Mirage from and my Sideswipe. And Grapple, who I had no idea who Grapple was. I'd not seen him in anything because I'd only had the Arrival from Cybertron VHS at that stage. I didn't have any 85 videos. And I remember sitting in the back of the car with G1 Grapple, like very orange Transformer, who I had no idea who he was. And I must admit, I was saying, why can't you just bought me another Lamborghini? Or why didn't you buy me Jazz? Why'd you bought me a truck? I don't even know who it is. But I remember that whole sitting in the back of a car, But I didn't throw up on it. Just if anyone's wondering,
that's good. Yeah. I guess the irony of all of that, not the throwing up bit, but the irony of all of that is that that actually pretty much all of the characters, the cars and whatever, anyway, were represented in the cartoon, weren't they? I mean, not so much in 85 because you got stuff like the Jump Starters, Deluxe Insecticons, things like that. But actually, I'm thinking in terms of repaints anyway. It's not like now where you might get weird recolors of toys that don't appear in fiction or don't really have a place in a cartoon or whatever. Actually, then pretty much everything was represented in one way or another, and you didn't really get just random repaints, did you? I mean, you had Grapple and Inferno in 85. Obviously, you had Ironhide Ratchet in year 1. There were some examples, the Datsuns, but even then there's typically like differences between them. It's not just straight up repaints. And actually, I had this conversation with someone online the other day who was asking about were there lots of repaints in G1. And it was like, actually surprisingly few. Like, it's really a very, very, very rare occurrence. A couple in the first 2 years, maybe 3 years. But I mean, after that, very little at all. So, it's fascinating now how different it is to today, really.
Yeah, because I think in the 84 line, it's only the Seekers and the Tapes, isn't it? That are the recolors.
Blue Streak and Prowl, I guess, if you can.
Yeah, but Prowl's got the light bar, though, doesn't he? Well, he obviously does, but I mean, there's still slight differences between those, whereas the Jets and the Tapes are just the same, just in different colours, aren't they?
Yeah, Buzzsaw, Laserbeak as well.
Yeah.
So
I guess you also had like yellow and red Cliffjumper, yellow and red Bumblebee.
That's true.
Yeah, which was, again, another attempt to pad the line, wasn't it? But yeah, I don't know. It just strikes me as funny. That's all. But what repaints there are certainly in those first couple of years. But even then, it's not that many. Seekers aside, perhaps. It's really not.
It's weird how you don't think of them as repaints as well, because they are separate characters, aren't they?
That's how they get you with those Seekers, man. That's how they get you. Honestly, like they just, people are like, I don't like repaints, but then I'll buy 8 Seekers. I'll get the Rainmakers as well. I'll get those. The number of people I see getting that Rainmakers, War for Cybertron pack or whatever, and it just always makes me giggle. That's all. But that's how they get you with the Seekers.
Or being upset about not getting it.
Right. I mean, we talked about this in 1984, but nowadays, as a collector, where you sort of hate yourself a little bit for eating this stuff up, man, that's all I wanted as a kid. I just wanted the 6 planes.
Yeah.
And I was quite happy to say, okay, well, what toy would you like this time? I just want Starscream in blue. What toy would you like this time? I'll take him in red this time, thanks. What about this time? Well, blue again, but with the brown wings. So that was just fine when I was a kid. Just every time, just another Decepticon strike plane. So, yeah, I'll take them,
Shows you
and
how
I was sad about the ones I didn't have.
It just shows you how powerful, though, putting a personality in a character, hanging that on it does, because I don't think of Thundercracker and Skywarp as, repaints of Starscream, even though I know they are. I wouldn't never think of them as the same. I just think of them as different characters.
That's the character thing exactly. When I got Red Alert, I hadn't seen him in the cartoon. And I remember thinking at the time, oh, this is just the same as my Sideswipe. But I've got another chance to own it now, and I'm not going to break this one. Because I didn't have Desertion of the Dinobots yet on VHS. And that's where I first saw Grapple. That's where I first saw Red Alert and a lot of those toys. And I'd had Megatron's Master Plan, so Thrust, Ramjet, and Dirge were obviously like big favorites of mine. And I'd seen Smokescreen for the first time in that episode as well, when they all roll up at the mayor's speech, and the Decepticons are trying to steal the energy, and Prime and Trax as well, because my brother had bought Trax. I was like, oh my god, my brother's toy is in this cartoon, and he's got 3 modes. He's amazing. Before Ramjet knocked him out of the sky. So. And I loved Megatron's Master Plan so much for bringing these characters to those toys. It meant so much.
See, for me, it was Dinobot Island, because there's that. I mean, aside from the fact that it's a Dinobot-centric episode, so it's going to be quite entertaining anyway. But there's that brilliant sequence halfway through where they're trying to close all the time portals. And there's a sequence of the pirate ship where you've got Trax, Sea Spray, and Cliffjumper. But for me, it was those first 2. It was the first time I saw them in the cartoon, and it was just like, who are these guys? Just particularly Trax, as you said, kind of zooming in with a flying car mode. And just his voice as well, just the way he's all kind of like, oh, I'd rather stay in my stunning auto mode, and he kind of does all that thing. Yeah. And it's...
Belay the last order, Prime. I want to throw a little dark on the subject. Loved it. Word for word, I still remember those.
The voice acting in those cartoons as well, I just think was so superb. That there was something about the quality of the voices that just really gave you a sense of these characters. That I always think of like Hound in the first couple of episodes as well, and just the quality of the voice, just giving it that kind of gentle sensibility, that kind of sense that this was someone that you could get on board with, that you could trust. It's really hard to kind of put to really define it in a way, but they just imbued these characters with such a sense of grace. And I think it's a silly cartoon. Yes, it's full of flubs and animation errors. Yes, it's goofy as anything. But there's the sound of it. Actually, I think if you sit and listen to that, I said this before, the sound of that cartoon, I think it's gorgeous.
Well, hang on a minute. There was nothing goofy about Thrust breaking in on Chip Chase at Teletran 1 in Megatron's master plan. Did you see the terror in Chip's face?
Yeah.
And Thrust thought he was saving the day, and he ruined everything. And as a Thrust lover, I was embarrassed to my core that my guy had ruined everything for the Decepticons that day.
I was going to say, are you implying that Chip didn't have courage?
Well, not when he was facing Thrust coming through the roof.
Yeah, it was quite a moment, certainly.
But he stood up to him well there, didn't he?
He did.
Well, it was a pile of reject parts.
Right.
Yeah, there we go.
He didn't have a comeback for that either, did he? He didn't have a comeback. He just laughed and flew off.
I love that he then screws up their whole plan as well.
Right, yes.
This is classic for us.
And then at the last frame of that episode where the Decepticons are retreating, it's Thrust who sort of goes up last and he's like, yeah, it was you, mate. It was you.
Everyone's looking at him.
Yeah.
Let the side down.
I remember once when I took a photo of Thrust with Chip Chase, and the first comment I got was from you saying, I wanted to do that.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
The masterpiece Thrust, yeah.
It's good we're talking about the cartoon, though, because that does follow the similar sort of pattern of Toyline, doesn't it? By having, 52 episodes, whereas... Is it 52 or 54?
That's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, compared to season 1.
Right, because basically season 1, as we know it basically finished at Heavy Metal Wars, right?
Yeah, was it 16 episodes or something in season 1? I'd need to look it up, but very few comparatively.
Yeah, because I think it's the mini-series, isn't it? Is it the 4? And then there's an extra 12, sort of pad it out to a season.
Right, yeah.
And then Dinobot Island was the one where all the new characters came in, wasn't it?
Predominantly,
Was
yeah.
the first appearance of most of them, yeah.
Yeah, Perceptor, quite a few of them. And they've all got really clunky intros as well. They're all kind of like, why don't you use me, Perceptor? It's kind of like, what?
Do you not introduce yourself that way at parties?
Yeah, exactly. It's clunky as anything. There's a lot of kind of expositional introductions going on, but not as much as the comic, actually. Like the comic, early comic, not the UK material so much, but the US stuff was really egregious for this, honestly. Like there's a very...
Is it like the roll call?
Yeah. There's it's 84 actually, but there's if you've not seen it, I'll have to send it to you later, but there's a hilarious panel from the first issue of the American version of the comic, and there's the whole of the 84 Autobot cast introduce themselves in one panel, and they say their name, but they also state their greatest ability. So it's all like Cliffjumper going, oh well, they'll never get away from Cliffjumper with my glass gun, and it's painful. It's painful to say the least.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just reminded of how you introduce yourself at TF Nation.
Yeah, that is, yes.
And then someone says, "It's him."
Yeah, exactly.
It's him.
I don't know what my greatest ability would be, really. Is my greatest ability being able to reach the top shelf in the supermarket? I don't know. It's I'd have to think long and hard about that one, probably. But but no, lots of expositional introductions, as I say, in the old cartoon. But some really interesting characters as well. One thing I will say about 85, and I actually love 85 more than 84 for many reasons. One of which is that I think there's a lot more interesting characters, because in 84 you've got some quirky ones, but a lot of very traditional jocks. You've got your Sideswipes, your Sunstreakers, you've got your real kind of classic hero archetype lads, and then in 85 you get your Renford rejects. You've got your to sort of say it a little bit. You've got your Cosmos, you've got your Perceptor. You've got your, all of these guys. Warpath, who's, sliced short of a pizza, isn't he? But, you've got, all of these weird dudes.
Powerglide?
Yeah, Powerglide, do you know what I mean?
The Blowhard, yeah.
Yeah, the Blowhard.
And romancing his human ladies.
Yeah. Well, they were all
With his
doing
tiny
that, weren't they? They were all romancing, organic ladies of some sort. Sea Spray was at it as well, do you know what I mean? And he's having it away with that merlady or whatever. That was all a bit weird. But it was just a very, very bizarre year. But what they did really nicely, I think, was that they made some of the quote-unquote other guys the heroes. So the fact that there's an episode, and dedicated around a tiny toy, Beachcomber, who's a pacifist, and they put that front and center, I think that's really nice. For the time, especially, because you might get more of that now. But back then, you really didn't, actually. That's quite uncommon. And the fact that, like, Perceptor got a lot of starring roles and was in tons of the cartoon, and he turns into a microscope, and B, he's a scientist and isn't, like, particularly battle hardy or whatever. I think that's really cool, and props to them for doing that.
Yeah, and then that paved the way for him to be so awesome in the movie as well. You know, he's such a memorable part of the movie for me. Just his voice acting, like you say, and that personality standing in such contrast to the surrounding heroes. But,
I think you need that. I think you need that kind of break almost from them all just being hardened warriors. You know, it would get one of the reasons that I find the War for Cybertron cartoons, not to get into that today, but one of the reasons...
Here we go again. Good heavens.
You say that like I talk about it all the time, and I actually make the point.
Every episode.
I don't
You
know.
don't even see Optimus Prime transform on screen. That's my friend.
Scorponok went down a hole.
That is the only 2 criticisms I've ever made of that cartoon on this podcast. So here's the third in 13 episodes. Here you go. You can take this to the bank. It's that there's no real brevity. You know, there are characters that are supposedly not as battle hardened or whatever, but they're still kind of grim and, you know, kind of in the war and all of that. And it's all just very one note, I find. Whereas actually back then, it was a much lighter cartoon anyway, generally, but I like the fact that you had these very different archetypes of different characters, and that they weren't all as, you know, on the front lines. And, you know, they're actually characters that happily said, you know, I don't want to fight, and they weren't up for it. And you get a bit of that in WFC as well. I know you do, but just, I don't know, it felt to me like the characters back then, and that's not just me being, it's the golden years and everything now new is rubbish, because I don't think that's true. There are tons of great modern cartoons and some, you know, fantastic modern Transformers media, some as well. But, you know, I just
Name
felt,
7.
Robots in Disguise.
Yeah, too right.
Yeah.
But, you know, you were talking about these... you were talking about these Beachcomber especially. Yeah. I remember going to a friend's house, and that was the only Transformer he owned, was Beachcomber. And I remember at the time thinking, that's quite interesting. It's definitely a Transformer. It's got a rub sign. I don't know who this is. You know, okay, that's the only Transformer you have. And I was just like, I remember messing with it, but not being like enamored with it in any way, shape or form, and not thinking, I really want my parents to buy me a Beachcomber. And I think you guys were obviously reading Marvel UK, and I wasn't. So the cartoons were all the media I had. And I think it was a shame that we didn't get episodes like the Golden Lagoon, because that would have you know, provided some much needed context for a toy like that.
There's such I think that's such the strength of season 2 though. It gets a lot of grief, but it is that Toy of the Week episode, isn't it? Every episode focused on one character, and it's almost like an animated version of the tech specs, wasn't it? Like you would read those tech specs and they'd say like Red Alert is paranoid or whatever. They might not even say that, but it's that sort of thing, isn't it? And then the episode just focused on one trait, one personality trait, and it makes them really easy to then sort of connect with. That's what the strength of those episodes are, I always find. Yeah,
but then when you get the episode about the toy that you like, it's everything. Like I remember finally seeing The Gambler as a grown-up and thinking, this is a smokescreen episode, and it was great. I loved it. I mean, maybe mostly for the inclusion of a character called Sleazado, which is just terrific. But yeah, I loved The Gambler because of that precisely. And the Red Alert episode where he loses his mind. That was
it's one of the most memorable.
I think what's also worth noting is how
Auto Berserk. That's what it was.
Yeah, Auto Berserk. That's the one. Yeah. What's also worth noting is how more similar, I suppose, not exactly cartoon accurate, but how much more similar a lot of those second year characters were in the cartoon and the comic to their toy counterparts. Because in the first year, you know, I mean, Red Alert is a good example actually, because Sideswipe was heavily redesigned to look like a bit more athletic, a bit more humanoid, whatever, a bit more streamlined. But then Red Alert, actually, if you look at the animation model and the Marvel comic model, you know, it is closer to the toy. And I think it's, you know, kind of great that they made that differentiation, but also interesting that it happened in the second year to almost go back to the toys as opposed to what they did initially. Just kind of a different way around to how you would think it would be done.
But then you had the Coneheads who, first of all, were Coneheads, which was completely against what the toy instructions were telling you to pose them like. And, you know, they had those details like the knee, those, you know, like those polygons they had on their knees, which were basically their thighs and their knees at the same time.
Yeah, I was thinking more of the
stickers,
cars,
wasn't it?
the cars, to be fair. But yeah, you are right about the old Coneheads. But I still think it's a travesty when people pose the toys with the little cones up. It just looks so silly.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a cone up.
You're
collector.
a cone up man, I know.
Yeah,
you
because of Megatron's master plan. Because that was basically where I fell in love with those toys, and I did everything possible to recreate that look, to the point where when I first started collecting, I bought spare dirge bombs to put on the back of Thrust's wings, because that's what he has in the cartoon. He has basically dirge bombs on the back of his wings in robot mode. And obviously his little tiny rear fins are reversed upside down in robot mode. So I remember, I'm amazed I didn't break my childhood Thrust, actually, because I kept always having to replace those and put them in upside down to look as much like the cartoon as possible.
People like you explain why Takara Tomy could get away with doing things like the masterpiece over and over
It's true.
again.
It's so true. And those Conehead masterpieces was something I looked forward to with so much fervor.
They were not good. They were not
Story
good.
for another day, but man, that was something I was super enthusiastic about. Yeah.
Hopefully they'll get it right with the, if they do 52.
And you know what? If they do that right, and they do a perfect Thrust and Ramjet, I think I'd be hard pressed to resist that, because they still have, like, I'm finding it hard to resist MP52. So
yeah,
you never know.
Never know. You never know.
Is that because of its cartoony looks?
Yeah, and just, it's cartoon Starscream is the one I fell in love with. I loved the cartoon before I ever bought the toy, and just seeing that so perfectly represented, like we talked about in the Masterpiece episode, it's just in different periods of collecting in our lives, different things look perfect. And, they're just getting closer to that look, and you look back and think, well, how was I ever okay with that? But it's a whole different thing. You collect for different reasons at different times, and, G1 collecting now, you don't collect G1 toys to look like the cartoon, do you?
No, that's fair to say. And at no point, obviously, was I suggesting that any of those toys are cartoon accurate. I just find it funny that the second year toys, that the animation actually went closer to the toys than the first year. That's all. That's the bit that I find fascinating. Red Alert is kind of the ultimate example of that. There are others, obviously, but that was just one.
The lovely thing about Red Alert is that it's a completely Transformers-only color scheme as well. It's
yes,
a really nice.
That is true. Yeah.
The old fire chief.
Yeah, always perplexing, that one. You still get people now, I think, that are like, oh, it's not a police car?
And of course, like, I was stunned to find out that the Diaclone version of that was a police car. And I thought, wow, you can get this amazing Countach as a police car. And that was just so attractive. Still is. Like, Clampdown is beautiful. A lot of the nicest things that I felt came out of 1985, I used to own, and now I only have photos of, because it's such a popular year, and there are so many popular toys that are still enduring in desirability. I just can't even imagine ever being able to have them again.
That's true.
Things like Mexican variants of Prowl in black with the black Prowl head, and
right.
Mexican Smokescreen, which is actually the blue streak body, but in smokescreen colors. I've owned all of these, and it's just so difficult to find them now because everyone's looking for them and everyone pays loads. Red Slag. It's
Slag.
like I was offered 2 Red Slags recently. I'm trying to say that sentence with a straight face.
Wow.
This is becoming a theme on this podcast, isn't it?
Anyway.
It's a family-friendly podcast, Maz.
Yeah. And Red Slags are just getting more and more costly these days. And you get much less for more. Or you get for what you pay.
Cheapest.
So I mean, that toy comes with a exclusive red launcher, and you just can't find them for love nor money. So if you're going to buy a red Canadian Slag, if it doesn't have the launcher, you just have to accept that you're never going to have it.
Yeah.
And the price of those has gone so high now for junkers.
Yeah, I was going to say, and do you know the only ones I ever see are junkers? Actually, really, I very rarely. I can't remember the last time I saw one that looked halfway decent. I always see them beaten up and whatever.
Yeah, I just think there are so many people who are looking for these toys now. If you happen to own one in great condition, you don't need to go to eBay. You just basically, who to talk to get top dollar. And it's just like, it's an easy sale, no eBay faffing. And that's the same with things like Black Mexican Prowl as well. like Redfoot Optimus Prime.
I was just going to say about the old
stuff like
Seiji
that.
Prime. I was, I have a Seiji Prime now, finally, which was a real. I was going to say box tick, but that's not doing it justice, because that for me was a real, quite a heartfelt win. I was so happy to get it, and it's lovely.
Good find.
Yeah. I think, well, as I recall, you helped me out with that one. But
but I mean, that was such a good price. Someone had to get it, man.
It was amazing. I was just like, I kept watching it, thinking, it's never going to go for that, and it did,
Yeah, and then it does. Yeah, exactly.
So good, but it had been mislabeled, I think, slightly in the auction or whatever. But not mislabeled, but just not very clearly labeled, I should say. It was labeled as what it was, but it didn't. It was maybe missing one or two keywords, and I just kind of, luckily came across it. And but yeah, really, really good. I mean, but again, that's a toy that I think you just have to kind of. We talked about it at the time, didn't we? You just have to kind of accept whatever condition it's in. I'm lucky that mine is I wouldn't say pristine, but it's in very good condition. It has bits of wear, but it's not one that I would ever look to swap bits out on or anything like that, because it is what it is. It's not one that you want to upgrade or put repro labels on or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? Just because it's one of a kind. Well, not one of a kind, but
we had a question about this on YouTube not so long ago, didn't we? On one of your YouTube posts, like I talked about Frankensteining toys and how that kind of messes up the history of the toy, and someone said like, well, hang on a minute, mate, didn't you just say in the same episode that you took a Diaclone Black Track Styro and replaced it with a red Diaclone Styro? Haven't you just done exactly what you said you wouldn't? But that's the thing, like, if you know the chronology of these toys, and if you do look into variants and you know about them, you realize that for something like those toys, they were all being manufactured in the same place at the same time and were being shipped from Japan in their styro to the associated locations that those toys were being distributed in. So like a Black Trax in that styro was coming from the same place that a Red Trax was coming from that was being sold in mainland Europe. That's why those parts are interchangeable, because they have the same origin. And by maintaining the history of the toys and their integrity, you can make these connections. You can actually say, actually, this part is completely compatible with that release. So, you could conceivably do that if you knew what shared the exact same molding parts with that Redfoot Prime. And again, that's another subject altogether, but it's why it's so important that in a year like 1985, where it was like totally haphazard, cross nation,
you know what you're doing.
And you know where these things come from. Stuff. I was amazed to find out like Juicer Diaclones in 1985 were being shipped from Japan in styro to Europe and then being packaged in Europe based on stuff that was being printed in Europe. Boxes were being printed in Europe. So that was fascinating to me. And
Can I just ask you a question? I meant to ask it on an earlier episode, actually, when we were talking about the styrofoam then, is why did they switch, for the cars and stuff, when it came here, to the cardboard with the plastic bubble? Why did they switch from the styrofoam? Because you said they were putting them in with the styrofoam, weren't they, in some of the original boxes, and then putting like little cardboard inserts and stuff. So what was the reason behind the change? Because they still kept the styrofoam for larger toys, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
Magnus, for example, had it.
Yeah, Magnus, Jetfire.
Yeah.
Prime in 1984, Megatron, Soundwave. I don't know. I would wonder if it had something to do with cost. Was it more costly to produce styrofoam inserts for everything that they were planning to release in Hasbro? The existing styrofoam inserts that came from Japan would have fit much smaller packaging, though. That's the thing. Those styro inserts were much smaller. So you wouldn't be able to take like the styro insert from a Prowl and put it in a Hasbro box without those cardboard supports, like you were saying. So just suited them to, like, that's the box design we're going with. We need to create new insert packaging. And maybe it's just because they were seen as more disposable things. Like you wouldn't expect like kids to keep the packaging and all the insert stuff, whereas the Takara stuff was designed in a way to be then displayed and put back into the packaging. No, I don't know. Maybe the answer lies somewhere between cost and practicality and marketing and just general philosophy when it comes to children's toys.
There was something. It's like I knew about it, but I never really thought about it until you mentioned it, and then it ticked something in my head, and I was like, why did they change those boxes? Because you just think if they were already coming in the styrofoam, they would have designed the boxes around the styrofoam and the dimensions they had. But so it's just fascinating to think that they then instead went, no, we're going to redesign the boxes and create a whole new inserts.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at some Diaclone packaging, it's really threadbare. There's some cool stuff on the top and the bottom in terms of vehicle specs and cross-sell on the back, but obviously Hasbro had their own plans about what they were going to do with that packaging to tie it in with the fiction and all the Transformers stories. So they just needed more real estate, really, didn't they? On the packaging, tech specs, big back of box battle, big splash artwork, show the toy in the packaging, and big Transformers branding on the flap, stuff like that.
It's funny how you think of that though as well. Like it was all for show because the bubbles are obviously far less long-lasting and durable than the inserts. Like you say, there it's more disposable. And
no, they were encouraging you to cut up the box, cut, remove the tech spec, remove the robot points, destroy the box. That was actively being encouraged.
It's funny. It's almost like a accidental sort of recycling, isn't it? It's like they're getting rid of the the styrofoam because it's more environmentally bad, but that wasn't the reason. But it's just kind of accidentally gone through that.
Yeah, and if you don't cut out the tech specs, where else are you going to write down the number for a job interview that you have decades later?
There's a little callback for you. It's getting to the stage. This is becoming like the MCU. This podcast, you've got to really follow each little bit of it. Do you know what I mean? We sat down to watch old Loki recently, and the first thing my wife said was, I really don't want a history lesson on this before we start watching it. Do you know? I was like, fair enough, we'll just go in cold. And then within 5 minutes she was like, who's that guy? Honestly. And I kind of feel at some point that we're going to be like the same thing, because we're making references to stuff, and then we'll have to do a quiz at some point. So.
I look forward to the Netflix series then.
Yeah, well, yeah, there you go.
It's because we keep recording on Throwback Thursday as well. We always record on Throwback Thursday.
That must be it. That must be it. I was going to say, actually, just going back a step to what you were saying about, rare toys and the fact that actually some of the 85 toys are now very hard to come by in pristine condition. And I actually didn't even think, when you were saying that initially, I didn't even comprehend that you were going to start talking about variants, because I just thought
you're right.
I thought you were going to talk about some of them, like, I mean, let's be honest, Whirl and Roadbuster.
Yeah, that's right.
The Deluxe Insecticons, a lot of those. Swoop, I was going to say a lot of those Takatoku guys originally, but certainly, Swoop as well. Shockwave even is you've had some fun with that.
Yeah, exactly.
There are some nightmare toys to find there.
Absolutely right. I mean, some of these toys are, Jetfire. It is probably the poster boy for trying to find one in pristine condition. And it's so annoying because it's so available as a toy.
Oh, hugely so.
You could never call that toy rare. Yeah, you can never call it rare, but finding the one that you're looking for is going to be a mission.
Yeah.
And of course, we mentioned it in 1984. Some of these toys were actually available in 1984, right at the end of 1984. So there's like pre-rub versions of Skids, pre-rub version of Jetfire. There's a 1984 version of Shockwave, which you can sort of tell, because even in a sealed box, you can see along the seam of the chest from the side, it's starting to split where the arm is. That comes from the factory that way. So it's amazing how collectors have isolated these particular things to look out for in probably quite recent years. I mean, I'm still seeing things that people are discovering that I never knew existed. And this is 1985 in a nutshell. Just like so much variety and different things going on everywhere. But yeah, some of those 1985 bread and butter Transformers are really difficult to find in nice condition.
Yeah, I've had a hell of a time with it recently. Trying to find like a Roadbuster was just a total mission for me. I've lost count of the number of listings and whatever I've looked at for Roadbusters over the last however many years, and just started to think it was never going to happen, and I finally found one that turned out to be immaculate, and it was stickers applied as well. I couldn't believe it. But when that kind of toy, because the stickers on those ex-Takatoku toys especially, Whirl and Roadbuster, even more than the Deluxe Insects, are just crazy. They are so small and so precise. The instructions, I mean, look at this. Like, I love what Toy Hacks do, repro labels. I think they do great stuff. But clearly in the instructions for like the Deluxe Insecticons and that, even they couldn't figure it out, because they're just like, you see their instructions and they're like, well, I don't know. Do you know? Like, whatever. Just the original Hasbro instructions even are just totally like made up. There's just arrows pointing everywhere, lines going over lines, in the instructions about where these stickers are supposed to go. And it's just ridiculous. But yeah, so I got a Roadbuster, stickers applied, and I don't know, I couldn't believe it when I saw it, that the person had applied the stickers, but just so immaculately that I was super happy with it, and it's just pristine. But that was a real accomplishment for me. And to not find one that cost a arm and a leg as well was good. But so many of them that are just worn to anything. It's sad in a way, but also kind of fun.
A lot of that as well is because they were so prevalent. They were so used as kids' toys, weren't they, as well? So there is a lot of...
Yeah.
That's why you find those so often, like in junk shops and stuff. It's always the dead remains of a red alert or a smoke screen.
And there actually some of them, and again, I would use the Deluxe Insecticons as a prime example because, they were used as kids' toys. They're also hugely not durable, those toys. Like, they are very nice toys, but something like Ransack, I mean, I've actually had two because the first one just kind of crumbled a bit on me almost. Even though it was nice when I got it, it lasted not long. And then I used it for sort of spare parts or whatever. I've still got the kind of crumbly one just because I was like, okay, if ever the other one does deteriorate, then I've got some spare parts or whatever. And touch wood, I've been lucky so far. But, they're really not built to last in any way, shape or form. And I can also imagine how those characters not being seen in the cartoon, they crop up like one scene. They're in those Deluxe Insecticons in the UK version of the comic only. And they're barely mentioned by name. I can imagine how they were probably no one's favorite character, and so they probably just got like a bit thrown to the side and kind of disregarded or whatever. So all of this kind of adds up to make them hard to find now, I think.
It's always the way. It's the ones that nobody wanted that then become the hardest to track down and the most desirable.
Well, of course, we didn't get them in the UK either, did we?
That's true.
So there was a lot of toys with that kind of weird licensing because they weren't originally Hasbro and Takara toys that we didn't get in the UK. But it's funny, they turn up in mainland Europe. So you get like Milton Bradley versions of Deluxe Insecticons and Roadbuster and Whirl. And you get Omega Supreme in slightly not Transformers packaging, but very clearly based on Transformers packaging. And it's an official Toybox item. Yeah. Very clearly in Omega Supreme colors, but it doesn't say Transformers on the box. And that was sold in mainland Europe. Shockwave was a Milton Bradley toy. We didn't get that in the UK.
Yeah.
So
my Roadbuster's from the Netherlands.
Yeah, so it's a Milton Bradley Roadbuster.
Yeah.
Which somehow bizarrely ended up being sold in Japan as well, in Milton Bradley boxes.
Oh, I see that.
In the Transformers branding?
That I didn't know.
Shows up so strangely, like once in a while in Milton Bradley boxes, a Roadbuster will turn up in Japan. It's really odd.
And then, of course, we didn't get Old Swoop.
Oh, right. Yeah, which we detailed in previous episodes.
Liam's grandma tales.
Cost and fragility. And
it's a good example, though, because, again, Swoop was a good example, and Shockwave, of characters that the comic put front and center. And I'm not just talking the US comic, I'm talking the UK storylines.
Yeah.
They heavily focused on these toys, on these
Made
characters. And Swoop had the whole thing with his name, originally being Dive Bomb in the comics, and that his name got stolen by Dive Bomb and all of that. And
I've read. What's in a name? I have read that.
What's in a name?
It's brilliant. I love it.
It's a good story. But then the fact that you couldn't even get the toy, it's just kind of incredible. Not to mention he was big in the cartoon as well. So, and he's in some of my favorite episodes, like Desertion of the Dinobots.
Starring role in Transformers the movie as well. Well, not starring, but he's in it.
Prominent.
Unlike
it's just unlike blink and you miss him. But it's just kind of mad, isn't it? Very haphazard approach to distribution and all of that. And as you said, just I'm sure as a result of a lot of licenses and all of that, but also a lot of fragility. And
well, do we want to talk about that? Like where some of these toys came from?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, we did get Jetfire in the UK. Jetfire was quite widely available outside of Japan. They couldn't sell it in Japan because this was obviously a toy. And it's funny, Liam had this recently as well. He posted a picture of G1 Jetfire and he started getting people telling him that's not a Transformer, that's a Macross Valkyrie.
Yeah.
And we're like saying, yes, it is. But it was licensed by Hasbro from, at the time, Bandai, because Takatoku had gone under by the time Jetfire came out. So Bandai had the license for these 155 Chunky Monkey Valkyries, as they're called. And they released Jetfire in Jetfire colors. And obviously in the cartoon, they couldn't depict him in the same way as he looked as a toy, which is straight up Macross repaint with a few safety features added, rounded nose cone and stuff. And then we had Skyfire in the cartoon, who didn't get a toy. You bought Jetfire instead. And Jetfire then couldn't be sold in Japan as Jetfire because of the clash with the Macross license and all of that palaver. Jetfire was available in mainland Europe, in Milton Bradley boxes in 1985, and then also in 1986 in Hasbro Europe. And I think that might just be my favorite 1985 Transformer, and it wasn't even a Hasbro Takara product.
Surely
that toy has stood the test of time.
One of your favorite
immaculate
G1 Transformers, isn't it? I would have thought.
One of my favorite toys in history. Top 5 toys in history. It's like probably at number 2 for me. Like some days I think it's number 1 of just the best toy ever made. Articulation that was just way ahead of its time. Looks wise, size wise, just that whole snap-on armor. The beauty of those modes, and man, what looks better than a G1 Jetfire all hooked up with his armor, or even just in its box in jet mode?
Something.
It has such a presence as well, because it's a large toy. It's not a small toy.
One of the few Transformers that you can do one-handed, isn't it?
What, you mean transforming one-handed?
Yeah,
it's true.
You can do it.
No, I think I wrote that in a Macros article. It's absolutely true.
I'm like, where's this going, guys?
I have seen it. You can. I have seen it done. Once, I think, but I've never tried it myself. But I had heard that and then seen it done once.
What a magical transformation on that toy!
Yeah, because the transformation's so smooth and so simple that actually it is possible to just kind of manipulate it with one hand in such a way that you can do it, which is a weird thing for someone to have discovered. But there you go. I
think if anything, it's a compliment to how well designed that toy is.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not awkward to handle at all.
Yeah. I think it's exceptionally well built. I think a lot of people remember it for the die-cast and all of that. The fact that it was so sturdy. The articulation, I'm sure, is a big selling point for a lot of people in their memories.
Well, I remember as a kid seeing Jetfire in school on a toy day. So we had, like that one day before the end of term when everyone was allowed to bring in their toys at school. And it's funny because I don't think that's a thing anymore, but they do it here in Iceland. Like, my daughter has a day at the end of school where they're all just allowed to take their favorite toys into school. And I remember I can't remember what Transformer I took, but it was totally overshadowed by the young lad whose mum and dad had bought him a Jetfire. And I didn't know who Jetfire was at all, not seen him in the cartoons, didn't know the comics. And that toy, I just remember it so fondly. It was the undercarriage and the landing gear and just all the details on it. My brother remembers seeing Jetfires for sale in the UK. And he said he remembers at one point going into Toys R Us and they had them out of the box as well. Like in that third girl walk mode, he distinctly remembers that being displayed like that in a toy shop.
So from the way we're talking, does this mean I'm the only one who had one as a child?
I didn't have one as a kid.
I didn't have one, no, but I knew someone.
We didn't have your nan.
Yeah, man.
No, that's not how I acquired Jetfire, through a playground trade, because it was that there was always kids who had grown out of Transformers really quick. They were like super into it for a year, then had moved on, and so this kid had got it and he had no interest in it whatsoever. So I can't remember how to trade it, but it wasn't very much. It was
That's
one of those.
How you get all your Jetfire toys, isn't it? People just walk up to you and give them to you in plastic bags.
It's a recurring life theme.
That's the first time I met you in person, Liam. You were just wandering around with that plastic bag of Armada Jetfire and whatever. But
you maybe see like Rab C. Nesbitt or something, like some like drunk guy walking around with kind of white lightning and Jetfire in a carrier bag.
I didn't say that. Can I point out? But,
anyway, to be fair.
Yeah. But no, I knew someone that had one, definitely, because I remember as a kid the pop-out wheels being so fascinating with the way they worked and quite lethal, but
yes,
very lethal. But so much of it is familiar to me in terms of nostalgia that I definitely had to play with one, but I'm pretty sure I didn't have one.
You can't lay eyes on that toy as an enthusiast of toys or as a kid who likes Transformers and ever forget it. It's looks wise, it's just way up there. Handling wise, the robot mode proportions were so fantastic. I mean, it was so far ahead of its time as a toy. I mean, it's no wonder that Macross has the passionate fan base that it does when that's what it launched with.
Yeah.
And they just kept pumping out different colors of that mold, which did different things, different heads, different armor. And it's
I do love your little collection of them.
It's like Car Robots is now. It's a slippery slope I always stayed away from because I knew what would happen. And in 2013, it finally happened. I just decided, you know what? I'm just going to buy them all. And then I started buying vintage Macross, reissue Macross, variant bootleg Macross, because I just wanted the entire Jetfire rainbow. And I know Macross fans will wince at that because they say it's not a Jetfire rainbow. Jetfire is the exception. You know, it's a Macross toy line, Robotech in the US, I guess, and Jetfire is the oddity that some of them still don't know about. And you get that on social media. You post a photo of Jetfire like, no, this is a Transformer. Here it is in the box. This is from 1985.
It's funny because you do not get that with any other Transformer, like Shockwave. Nobody comes in and goes, "Oh, actually, that's Galactic Man," or some other thing.
That's true.
Or
yeah.
or Skylinks or Omega Supreme or anything like that. Nobody ever does that. It's only
maybe
Jetfire.
you don't get it, but I'm pretty sure I've had this comment about it. Like, that's why when you see my Twitter post, I've gone to some sort of length to make sure I've got the year right, the name of the toy right, the actual name of the company, because someone will say it. And speaking of Astro Magnum, the Galactic Man, did you guys see that just this year, someone had gone to Toyco's warehouse and factory and found a lucky draw chrome silver pre-Shockwave?
Yeah. Beautiful.
Oh my goodness. This is what I'm talking about, this hobby. Like, nearly 40 years down the line, and we just discovered this prize toy. Like, what?
Yeah.
And some kid in Japan has it, other kids have it.
Absolutely amazing.
It's always funny with that to me because I always remember the Jetfire toy, obviously. But as a kid, on the Children's Channel, they used to have a block with Transformers, and following it would be Robotech. So I was always aware of Robotech. Right. And so when I saw those toys in a non-Robotech form, like the Valkyries, I used to just be like, fake Robotech. Not connecting the Jetfire dot, if that makes sense. The same.
I had a mate that was very into Robotech and whatever as well. So yeah, I was well aware of that. But they did actually animate Jetfire in his toy form, didn't they? For
in the TV advert, right?
For the TV advert. Yeah. There is a brief bit of animation for him, which can still be found, I think, on YouTube or whatever today. So that's kind of fascinating.
It looks cool as well.
It does look cool.
Do you guys ever notice in auction lots, like from the UK, you will every now and then see a Macross Valkyrie? I think it's the VF1J that you see, the grey one with the red stripes on the wings. You still see that sometimes because that was released in the UK.
The other thing, I guess, that's funny about Jetfire is that, of course, it has the same origins as the stuff that we've already been talking about, about Roadbuster and Whirl and the Deluxe Insecticons and all of that, in that they were originally, as we said, Takatoku products. And then it was only once Takatoku went under and that Bandai bought all the licenses for them and then subsequently licensed them to Hasbro that they got ported over to Transformers. But I guess, I don't know, that I remember kind of learning actually that Jetfire had the same origin as all of this, kind of other weird stuff and being like, oh, okay. Because I think Jetfire is a kind of history that a lot of people, people know that it's a Macross toy originally, but I don't know if people necessarily make the same connection as to, the stuff, the other stuff that I'm talking about. Do you know what I mean? Like all the Deluxe Insecticons and things. So it's just So it's just kind of funny how actually they all sat under the same sort of umbrella.
Well, like Dorvac is Roadbuster and Whirl, and then you've got Beatras, which is the bugs, the Deluxe Insecticons.
Yes,
and it's funny because the Beatras Ransack only got a really, really small run, and it's super hyper rare toy to find.
There's a lot of debate, isn't there, about whether it was actually made or not? But the theory is now that it was. But
exactly.
As you said, in a very late kind of limited run, just before
Beat Vadam is the name.
Yeah.
In green. And actually, one just sold recently. The same guy who had the prototypes we were talking about the other week, like the swoop from the Transformers box with the red and gold parts and the grapple, which was from the box. The guy had, I can't remember whether it was a hand-painted. I don't think it was hand-painted. I think it was just like a production Beatras Ransack in green. And that just went for crazy money because it's so difficult. And apparently it's like proper end-of-line stuff that it was released. But then, of course, we got Ransack in Transformers. So I've always wondered, like, do fans of Beatras have a lot of affection for Ransack?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Well, I think it would be, if you were into Beatras, surely it would be tempting to own those toys in other colours, at least. I mean, I've definitely looked at a couple of the Beatras toys, like Beat Googal. I saw one going recently, the kind of pre-Chop Shop. And I remember thinking, wow, that's kind of attractive. And it was not a bad price, actually.
It's beautiful.
I was sorely tempted. It just wasn't kind of the right time or whatever. I don't know, maybe one day it'd be nice to, it'd be kind of fun to do that. But as you say, trying to track down the old, pre-Ransack could be
What a find that would be, though, to be the one who finds a beat that unboxed. Yeah. What a find that would be.
It would be something. I don't think that's my destiny somehow, but never know.
I can't wait for one to show up. I really can't. It'd be so nice to have that confirmed that was actually end of line released. It'd be such a treasure.
Yeah, it really would. I do think that the history of those toys is just fascinating, though, and I just love the whole thing of them, going to Bandai, being licensed out, and just the way that they were really kind of like, just fill in the line, just get them out there. Do you know what I mean? But the fact that they got no help at all in terms of fiction, or as I say, they're sparsely in the UK comic at all, but not in the cartoon or any of that kind of stuff. And it's kind of funny because I think Roadbuster and Whirl get a little bit more recognition, because they Whirl has been in IDW and stuff like that, and
Wreckers
been picked up again. Well, I was going to say because they're Wreckers, because they were in Target 2006 and they were Wreckers in that story in the comic line where the Wreckers originated, the whole thing. Simon Furman and all of that, and I think that's what's kind of given those characters that longevity. Whereas still today, does anybody care about the deluxe Insecticons? Not really, and it's a shame because they're actually really nice toys. I love them actually. I really, really love them. I think they're
so different, aren't they? They're so strange,
so weird. Colors wise, just totally out there.
Great.
They
really pop, nice. Don't they? They really pop.
Those translucent orange wings on Ransack are really nice.
They're really lovely. Actually, for me, the one that always gets me is Barrage because it's yellow and green. So it's a bit different in terms of a Decepticon lineup anyway. It's super articulated, a bit like Jetfire actually. It's not as articulated as Jetfire by any means, but it's got joints at the hips, joints at the knees, so you can properly do a little running man type pose. It's got posable arms as well. And just really interesting little folded out wings in the kind of, was it like a rhino beetle? No, stag beetle. And it's got little fold out wings, little articulated wings in the beetle mode. Lots of little articulated legs for the beetle as well. So they're very intricate little interesting toys. And I just don't think they get enough rep.
And super different from the common G1 Insecticons.
Yeah, absolutely. Which I guess are weird as well because they're the only Waruda Diaclone toys, aren't they, to have been carried over. And that I always find kind of fascinating that they were the bad guys in Diaclone.
And like you were saying about Skywarp in 1984, those were given Decepticon color schemes, and now I just think their best incarnations are the Transformers ones. Just the standard, orange and yellow translucent canopies for the chests, purple and black, and the chrome on the wings. Just they're such a beautiful set. They've never been topped as far as Insecticons go.
I mean, I do like the old Christmas theme bugs, the Diaclone ones. Yes. They're kind of fun. But I agree that the purple and all of that is hard to pass up for those guys. It's kind of iconic now, isn't it? So.
They're so pretty together. They're so beautiful. They're gleaming chrome and nice, small, easy to transform toys. I remember my daughter loved them. I had a set of reissue Insecticons and she absolutely adored those toys. Really.
Yeah. It's one of the most beautiful color schemes, and for a team as well.
Yeah.
I don't think it's been bettered by any team. There's just something beautiful about that uniform, black, purple, and sort of orangey yellow.
Yeah, it's really cool. And of course, they're all toys, and we talked about this before, a previous episode, but toys that stood out to me, a bit like Grimlock and the Dinobots, for having little driver's seats and things like that. Yeah. It was just like, what is going on here? Why have they got wheels? Things like that. Because in the cartoons, they're just insects, they're just like beast modes essentially in the cartoon. But of course, they were meant to be robotic insect vehicles in Diaclone. So, and it's just a totally different spin, isn't it? It's just weird how they took those toys that actually make a lot of sense when you put a little driver with them and you say this is supposed to be like a beetle-shaped tank, effectively, or whatever. Kind of makes more sense when you see them. And then when you say actually it's supposed to be like a robotic animal mode or a robotic insect mode, it doesn't quite work as well, but still cool. So it's fine. It's a beetle with wings. Who cares? With wheels, sorry. Who cares?
I was super impressed when you said as a kid this was like with Grimlock, it was confusing to you because you didn't sort of connect the dots. Like, why has this got a canopy? And I was just thinking, I don't think I ever questioned any of the toys I had. But then it was like, because of the toys I had, I had Smokescreen, I had Red Alert, I had Grapple. And then when I photographed Grapple with the Diaclone driver, it suddenly brought the memory back. I was like, no, hang on. I remember as a child folding Grapple's cab down.
Right, the cab.
And thinking, hang on a minute. Why does it do that?
I had
a tiny
Inferno.
little seat there.
I had Inferno, and it was the same thing. I remember realizing at an early age that these things moved, other than joints, maybe. But even then, with G1, most of the joints are for transformation, aren't they? Mostly, not all, but most. I remember realizing that these things moved in order to transform. So if something moved that wasn't part of transformation, it was a feature. And then, so being able to, as you said, move the cab forward on Inferno and Grapple, and seeing that there was a little seat in there was just kind of a, huh? What's that? Why would they include, I don't think I was thinking, why would they include a joint? But it was, that was the kind of, that was the logic anyway. But the little chair in Grimlock's back, I think that was the one that really got me.
And it's obviously a chair as well. It's
just pops up.
I never had Grimlock as a kid or Insecticon, so I think maybe I would have thought the same. But I can see how that would have raised an eyebrow. Yeah,
definitely. And on Magnus and stuff as well, and a lot of that. To be fair, I had Trax as a kid, and the little flip up compartment, the little flap, that was like, what's going on here? So I think a lot of that stuff.
There was always this that with hoist.
Yeah, that's right. Trailbreaker as well.
Yeah, it's true. And I think I know, Maz, you posted some pictures of a lot of this stuff with the drivers in place recently, and it really kind of resonated. I think with a lot of people.
Fun.
It was great. Really good way of doing it, actually, to put it all together. And I just think a lot of people, people that probably haven't thought about Transformers since the 80s, probably saw that and went, oh, really kind of connected the dots almost. And I think it was...
There were a lot of retweets of that sort of variety, yeah. A lot of that sort of stuff from people who, hadn't ever thought about that for 30 years. One of them was the dude from the Black Eyed Peas, actually. I think that's what he retweeted.
Yeah. I mean, that makes me laugh because you bring up that Black Eyed Peas guy like at least once a week now, I think.
No, it's been twice in 24 hours, isn't it?
It has. You mentioned it to me yesterday.
Definitely feels fresh.
I couldn't tell you what his name is, though.
Do you remember
I still don't know what his name is.
That guy from the Black Eyed Peas, he retweeted me that one time. It's just kind of funny.
Are you going to join them on stage next and perform?
With my Diaclone pilots,
yeah. Yeah, him and Will I Am, they're like bosom buddies.
The Transformers will return after these messages.
So, of course, a little word in regards to our sponsor for today, which is tfsource.com, which is really very exciting. As we said, important for us to take on a sponsor, and we really feel like they're a good one for us. I'm just having a little look at the stuff that they've got in stock right now. Plenty of exciting stuff coming up. I've got my eye on the old 3.0 Deluxe Optimus Prime, but there's also a few other things as well. MP52 Starscream that's just come in as well. Can't wait to get that one. You tempted with that one yet, Maz?
Very tempted. Yeah, I mean, if I was going to go Masterpiece again, that is absolutely where I would go.
Yeah, it looks great. It looks great. I'm very excited about that one.
You sure it's not MPO52?
Pretty sure on that one there, Liam. Pretty sure.
Well, I mean, the rate they're going, they might well get into three figures, right?
Yeah, that's true. I'm looking at TF Source's site now, and they don't have it on there. Let's put it that way.
I'll take it back. MP Crosscut looked amazing.
That does look cool.
Just shown off this week. That would be the one that I'd struggle most. That and Reboost. Oof,
yeah.
Good look.
Well, there's a pre-order for Reboost up now, and I think a pre-order for old Crosscut as well. In fact, there is. So there you go. So that's up for pre-order now on tfsource.com. Yeah. So
I got a lot of my masterpieces through TF Source when I was doing them, when I was buying them. Lots of them came through there.
Absolutely. They've even got some stuff you might be into, Liam. They've got the old Kingdom tracks now in stock. Is that one you're going for?
I'm not listening. Stop trying to tempt me with these amazing toys. Although, yeah, I am actually buying it. I think it looks great.
Looks very Trax-like. I know opinions a bit divided on that one, isn't it? But
how unlike Trax.
yeah, true. But that's just come into stock. So plenty of good stuff on there. Third party, mainline, all kinds of things. Do check it out. tfsource.com. Give them a look.
We now return to the Transformers.
Yeah, you can't talk about 1985 without talking about one of Transformers' most enduring concepts being sort of introduced here in the Triple Changes. We're all big fans of those guys, aren't we?
Yeah, Triple
Takeover. Yeah.
That's where the name comes from.
That's what it's all about. And
it's in the title, son.
Two, exactly. Two of the finest in 85 as well, of course.
Definitely.
They're both pretty bloody great, really, aren't they? What else is there to say? So, actually, this was really exemplified for me recently, because when the last TFN, sad to say that it was the last TFN because it was a couple of years ago now, but I'm sure you remember, Maz, hopefully what I'm going to say. Do you remember we got that little reissue Blitzwing for a friend of ours?
For TJ.
For TJ, yeah. That
Yes.
Huge. That had never seen it before. And because she's like very young, I think like half our age, which always makes me feel ridiculously old. But I think it was just seeing her, the sort of joy on her face of seeing that thing for the first time ever, and just how much she was kind of enamored by it. And it really just brought home for me what a clever design it is, when you kind of see it through new eyes. And it's just even as a kid, I remember being impressed with that toy, with the kind of the satisfying way that things flip over, and the kind of, they don't even snap into place. It's just the kind of clunk of them kind of getting to where they need to be and kind of sitting there through friction and things like that, and just the joints of it. It's just beautiful. Absolutely sublime engineering on that toy, and really nicely done. Great color scheme too.
Yeah, another one that benefited greatly from going from Diaclone to Transformers and getting a Transformers color scheme in very Decepticon themed, like lovely tan and purple.
Yeah,
beautiful toy.
That tan has never really been done better, has it? I remember all the debates about the third-party versions and things like that, and them trying to get that right. And it's never been done better than on the original toy, in my opinion.
So much of Blitzwing is on point. It's just almost everything on it is... You get stuck in your memory. Just the modes, the way it feels in hand. I remember the colors, even his face, the way it flips out, and how it's just like a yellow helmet, purple face, red eyes, just really beautiful looking G1 Transformer. I mean, even Lady Gaga felt the need to nick his look. It was so strong.
I've forgotten that. Yeah.
I remember my friend, a childhood friend, had Blitzwing, and I was really impressed. Like, I really was like, I want that. That is a really fun Transformer. Such good modes as well. The tank looks great. The jet, okay, got the boxy bits around the wings, but it looks great. And I love that.
Isn't it?
It is. And it's not just, it's old and crap, isn't that charming? No, it's cool. And I love that you can have the missiles in there and then still close it up for tank mode, and the missiles will stay in there.
That's a good feature. The tank is the definite highlight, I think. But yes, the jet is still excellent. It's not my absolute outright favorite triple changer, but it's definitely up there. It's definitely up there.
And it was funny because with the reissue, you can no longer remove the tank turret, but the vintage one you can. So you'll get vintage Blitzwings which are missing the tank turret. You just see that little rotating thing on the top of it. But the reissue, it can't be removed that way. And one thing I wish they had kept from Diaclone was that it had a much more telescopic barrel. So, you can still pull out the barrel on the Transformers one, but it was just molded to be a bit more telescoping and long, like a proper tank. I'm guessing that probably broke quite easily, which is why Hasbro decided to change the shape of it. But yeah, Blitzwing's lovely, but not the winner.
Well, who are you going to say? Because mine's not even a 85 toy for my winning triple changer.
No. I mean, for me, I think I have to go all the way to 1988 to find my favorite triple changer. But even Astro Train is, for me, so much more awesome than Blitzwing, and Blitzwing is already awesome. Yeah, I love Astro Train.
Astro Train's great. Yeah, really. I mean, that is really good in all three modes. Certainly, the two vehicle modes are stellar. And the fact they look so different as well. I do love the robot mode. The arms kill me slightly with that, I gotta say.
Yeah, they were meant to extend, of course.
I know, yeah, and on the prototype,
you can see it as well, can't you?
See that they can, yeah. It's a weird one. I don't know why they didn't do that.
I think it would have been too fragile. I think it reminds me a lot of Swoop's arms and how fragile they feel when you extend them because they're on such thin stalks. I'm pretty sure that's what it would have been like. And of course, just to rub it in further in all of the box artwork and the catalogs, we've got this lovely grey Astro Train. It's cartoon accurate, lovely colours, dark purple.
Nice. Yeah.
I think that's beautiful. The most heartbreaking of all of the colour changes they've done.
I think you're right, yeah.
I think that's possibly the most heartbreaking one to see.
And it's why of all the G1 prototypes that Raz owns, and he's basically got the entire line as a prototype, it's the fact that when he got that grey Astro Train prototype, it was just like, shove everything off your desk. It was like, God damn it, of course you found that. Everything else you have is nothing compared to that G1 Astro Train proto, because But I don't even care that it didn't transform. It's still got putty in its arms for where they attach the Blitzwing weapons to it in the catalogue. But it's just, the gold wheels as well, and the beautiful colours on the boosters.
I spent hours staring at those catalogues, and that was one that definitely captured my attention more than most, just because of the colour of it and everything. So, and then of course, we did get the anime Astro Train.
We did.
But still not quite the same colours, is it? But still beautiful.
That's right. It's as good as we're going to get, and of course that would be like super tough to get now. And I still don't understand.
Expensive.
Yeah, I still don't understand why people didn't plump for it when it was advertised. But then I didn't either.
Yeah,
I was all into these things. Like, and I didn't go for it.
Yeah. The prices of that toy now are redonkulous. Like I can't even believe that it is worth what it is worth. It's just so silly in a way, that it goes for so much, or that it's not even like rare. It pops up frequently, but it's just the fact that
I think it's actually been surpassed by the eHobby mini-bots now in price,
for sure.
I think.
Yeah, the mini-bots is...
Yeah,
they are something else, man. I mean, I don't know. I saw a price that they went for recently, and I nearly fell off my chair. I was like, "What? People are paying that for them now?" It's
but of course, who wouldn't want a recolored Cosmos or a recolored Warpath, a recolored Power Glide? 1985, man.
Warpath. Yeah. They're great toys. They're great. Well, it's the 1985 mini-bots. Dare I say, I think are better toys than the 84. Crew, generally speaking. I think they're all great. I love Warpath as a toy. Really, really love it. It's just my personal preference, but I love Power Glide as a toy. Bizarre as the robot mode is, I love it. Beachcomber,
one of my favorites,
is great. I've got what I will say about Beachcomber that's kind of interesting, and talking about those mini bots, those eHobby Go bots, is of course the whole kind of origin of them, and the fact that they were in the catalogue in those different colours. Because that I've got that little red KO Beachcomber.
That's right.
Buggy Man, as he's sort of called in the fiction and everything. And every time I post a picture of that thing, someone is like, "What? A red Beachcomber?" Like every single time. And it creates such interest. And I think it's because these are little toys that people had. It's probably the same with the GoBots. They're little toys that everybody's familiar with. They were like, 10 a penny when you were a kid. Every bugger had them. Everyone had them.
Ubiquitous, as Liam likes to call them.
Yes, that's a good Liam word. It's a good Liam word.
But I was literally just about to say it as well. That's the worst part.
I'm sure you were.
Just gearing up.
Sure you were. But they're in everybody's pocket. They were just like, but equally they weren't really cared for, although I'm sure they were loved. They weren't looked after in that same way, because they just like sat in the bottom of your school bag with all your books and stuff, didn't they? And then now the fact that actually you see them and they're in a completely unrecognizable color. Yeah. I don't know. I think it just makes them kind of intriguing to people in a little way. Something that's so familiar.
I think you've just described why so many Transformers collectors get into Diaclone and Micro Change. It's it's that exactly. Yeah. It's that character that you loved your whole life in a different color. Just new mystery, new element added to the myth of this wonderful toy you've enjoyed your whole life.
Yeah, I know that's what it was. When I saw that red Beachcomber KO, it went for next to nothing, and I just saw it and was like, God, I have that. Do you know what I mean? It was so dirt cheap. And then
that's the kind of thing I think I'd buy a KO for. Not to act as a counterfeit to fool people into buying something that they thought was vintage, but something like that that's never been produced and is like, well, we all really wanted it, and now you can get a red Beachcomber, and it looks great.
It does look great. It's as good. It's as good a quality as the official toy. In this case, they're not always, but this one is, and I love it.
It triggers me when people say that.
I know it does. In this
case,
just
talk to Liam and his poor Sunstreaker KO.
Well,
they're not even.
That's why I very
healed.
Quickly caveated it to say not always, because more often than not, yeah. I have a red Mirage KO, and it's crap, just terrible. I wouldn't bother with it. Do you know what I mean?
No, Sixo, they're as good as the vintage.
These are
they're
lies.
every bit as good quality as the originals, lies. So I've heard.
I want to make it clear that that's not what I said. I said this particular Beachcomber is as good. But,
no, I know. It's not you I'm quoting.
I know.
So you're not just going to wait for the KO of this Masterpiece Starscream map?
Yeah.
Because it'll be improved.
Right, yeah.
Be improved.
Maybe iGear will do one.
That's a whole other... Wow, that's a flash. What is it called? Flash from the past.
Thursday. Here we
go. Wow.
Well, that was a flash from the blast. Is that what the kids say?
I got it slightly wrong there, didn't I? A flash from
We
the
should
block.
have talked about that last week, eye gear, shouldn't we?
Yeah. Oh man, eye gear is like a whole thing unto itself, isn't it? I was reminding them about old Nightbird, doing a Nightbird article just yesterday or the other day or whatever, and reminded myself about eye gear, Nightbird. So yeah, had thought about them, but yeah. Anyway, that's a whole other topic.
Triple changes.
Yeah.
Well, we're back
Astro
on,
Train.
I thought we were doing. I thought we were on Minibots now. I thought Minibots.
We were,
was,
but now it's Astro Train.
yeah.
Let's talk about Astro Train.
We kind of did him though, didn't we? Like train, plane.
He's reversal on the tracks. That's what he's doing. Choo choo, motherfucker.
Whoa.
I mean, beep beep.
We ran a poll yesterday, and Liam was voted as one of the least likely to be swearing. And look at that, unbelievable potty mouth.
These people chose my dog.
I know, yeah.
But no, there is more to say about Astro Train because it's a toy that recently got reissued by through Walmart, and for the first time, it's one of those funny things where for ages regular G1 Astro Train was just 10 a penny everywhere, no value whatsoever, and then there's the white Astro Train from Japan, which black and white. That is a beautiful toy, totally white shuttle. Once you transform it, it's totally black in train mode. Fantastic, that little part of it. And it had just a lovely looking robot mode as well. Good luck to you finding one vintage that hasn't yellowed. Even the reissues are yellowing now. And that was really popular. And then, of course, we got that as a reissue in the book box. Then we got it commemorative. Then we got a reissue of that in another commemorative reissue of the reissue. And then suddenly the white one was everywhere. And then there's the e-hobby one in grey, which was super popular. There's bootlegs of that now.
There's the platinum one.
Yeah, the platinum one, which apparently, for ages we were led to believe that was supposed to be like a callback to Mark Tackle from Landcross. But apparently it's not. It's not that.
I never really kind of bought into the idea that it was, to be honest. I thought that would have been... I don't know, it was like a weird one where people went, oh, it's blue, orange, and white, so it must be like Mac Tackle. And it was kind of like, I don't know, like, because every red Transformer is a callback to Optimus Prime. I don't know, it struck me that it was just kind of a coincidental colour scheme, and it would have been a very niche reference. Why one part of Landcross? Do you know what I mean? Why that? I don't know, as a thing.
The Blitzwing is the other is
flywheels.
It's flywheels, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe it was, but has it been confirmed now then that it wasn't?
Oh, I don't know about confirmed, but someone did mention that it was because it was like a Hasbro Asia Platinum Edition thing, that it was based on the colors of the Chinese space program. So maybe that's what that was. I think that's the story, and I apologize if that's not correct. But yeah, then it was actually got to the point where the original G1 colored Astro Train from Hasbro was the one that we hadn't seen a new version of, and that was actually getting quite tricky to find in good condition because of those clear plastic stickers, the factory stickers on its vertical fin. They're always peeling. You had unused ones and they were always peeling, or it's discolored or something like that. There's chips in the diecast. And now the Walmart one it's lovely. I mean, there's a bit of a tolerance issue with the leg flaps, but it's beautiful. Stickers are pants, but it's a lovely way to get a G1 Astro Train. It's such a lovely toy for them to have reissued. I'd love to know if anyone bought them for their kids, and how did they find it? Did they enjoy it? Or I know it's one of the very few Transformers that I showed my wife and check out this thing. It goes from shuttle to robot to train, and she was genuinely impressed at the engineering and design of that toy. The Astro Train's brilliant. I love it.
There's an intricacy to it, though, isn't there? And the same with Blitzwing. And a lot of these 1985 toys, they're very intricate compared to what you get now. And so they're still quite mind-blowing when you give it to people. It still feels so different to what, say, kids now expect from a Transformer, which is less steps and a lot of plastic. Them pesky kids.
The youth of today.
Pesky kids and their Optimus Primes.
I do know what I mean. Astro Train, actually, talking about that reissue, that was a funny one for me because I picked up a very minty vintage Astro Train. And then the Walmart reissue was announced, I can't remember exactly how long, within a year later. And my initial reaction was, of course, of course this has happened. But actually, I'm still really glad to own the original. It's still lovely. And
it's slightly different colours.
It's, slightly different, isn't it? So
much better stickers.
Yeah. Exactly. So I'm still
better tolerances,
but it's still good that they reissued it. I think it's great that they did that because
I'm really happy to have it. Yeah,
never been reissued actually in the original toy colors. The original
ridiculous gun. overcompensating gun, which is like 3 times the length of his arm.
That gun actually is a total pain in the what's it, because how do you display it? Because if you put him behind anybody, and if you want to raise the gun, it's too long. You know, it's like shoving into the next guy's back. Actually, Blitzwing is a bit the same, because you either have to hold the sword out at a complete, like you have to have his hand out at a right angle with the sword up, or he's holding the sword down and the sword sticks out so far that he creates a lot of. Those two eat a lot of shelf space, is what I'm saying, with their weapons.
for the size that they are,
yeah, they're not big toys, but
no, that's. Do you think that's a disappointing thing about them? Maybe that people were disappointed that they weren't bigger, considering that they were quite a show presence. You know, like think about the God Gambit and Triple Takeover as episodes, and you know the triple changes were a big part of that. And you know, Astro Train was supposed to be freaking enormous, you know, but the toy's tiny.
I think it's one that I think people laugh about a bit even now, because it's toys like him, and I guess the other one is, I mean, it's 86, but it's the Stunticons I often see cited as an example of like, oh, look at how small they are, because you know people compare Motormaster to Optimus Prime, and they're not the same size. You know, and the cars are so much smaller than the Autobot cars. So yes, I would say Astro Train is on that list of very pertinent examples that people can remember being a little bit disappointed about in terms of the size, for sure.
Yeah, it's not even remotely in the same ballpark as even Starscream and Thrust and that kind of thing. And that design was probably slated for Diaclone, but it was not a triple changer. There's been like a prototype found of a robot that turns into the train without the shuttle mode. White and black, I believe it was as well. So it was something that would have been planned for Diaclone and came to fruition through Transformers.
Yeah,
and I'm so glad that it did.
Yeah, so just a shame that we didn't get the other triple changeover. Triple changeover. What am I about? I'm going off on some weird tangent with words today. But yeah, so interesting translation from the original toy line for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting you did say, just to go back quickly, about being disappointed, because I remember being disappointed by them being small. I was going to say that earlier, but that was my first reaction to them when I got them as kids. As a kid, should I say. Was that I just felt they were very small in my hands. Not that they were small compared to the TV, just they felt so small in my hands. Even compared to Minibots, which are obviously smaller, there's just something about them that felt really intricate and delicate.
So did you?
This weird.
So do you have like a disappointing experience? Like that's your memory of those toys from childhood?
No, because I grew to like them. Blitzwing less so, because he fell apart really fast. Like his turret just vanished and bits snapped off, and I think the sword handle snapped in his hand, which meant he just got relegated to the back of everything for years. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was.
I think the wingtips come off really easily on that as well. They stress and bend.
Even on my vintage one I've got now, the wingtips are bent.
Yeah. I think my reissue has a bent wingtip as well. The Takara book reissue, which strangely didn't have a rub sign. It was a weird omission. But yeah. And that's actually quite a desirable reissue. I don't know, did they just produce very few of the book box collection Blitzwings? Because it's one of the higher priced ones, that one and Hound. You know, they're just really expensive compared to the other book box ones, which are far more available. And of course, it didn't get like a Hasbro reissue Blitzwing, did it? And neither did Hound.
There you go.
One more little tidbit to add about triple changes. In the US, I think they did like, I don't know if it's right to call it a market test, but in one region, they were released with poster boxes in 1986. So you got Astro Train, Blitzwing with the poster box, which is really weird to see on a 1985 toy. So if you do have like a poster box Astro Train or Blitzwing, and a mate of mine did have one recently and he was just selling it, I was like, mate, that's actually quite a toughie. I remember he rapidly took it off sale after that. So that's quite a fun thing to look out for if your Astro Train or Blitzwing G1 box has a poster box, the yellow triangle in the corner.
So two of the most ubiquitous Transformer toys of the time were the jump starters. Did we all have those as kids?
I did.
I don't think I did, no.
Twin
I don't
Twist.
think I did.
Yeah, and Topspin.
I don't think I did. Again, I'm pretty sure someone at school did or whatever, because I do remember them. But those two as toys, they never really captured my attention, if I'm honest.
They didn't for many people, did they? Because they're two of the least desirable, and they're not ones that people really go back to.
I'll tell you what, though. Look at them today. Get 2 mint examples of those two with all the chrome, and they're actually really lovely. It's funny we mentioned TJ earlier with the Blitzwing. I gave TJ my vintage Topspin and Twin Twist, and she loved them because they were the wreckers on her shelf. I think this was before the Titans Return versions came out, or maybe simultaneously, because those two, like especially Twin Twist, is a total mare to find. But now you look at them, and they are so vintage looking. Also, Diaclone toys, and you can find Twin Twist and Topspin with early sticker versions that say DAR on their stickers, Diaclone Attack Robo. So I've looked for those for ages, and in the UK, loads of people would have had red-faced ones, which were the Mexican variety of jump starters. But they actually look really cool today, just because most of the robots on your G1 shelf are going to be standing static and straight.
Don't with car parts hanging off.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I think they are robot designs that you appreciate a little bit more as an adult. Actually, funnily enough, just because particularly like Twin Twist and Topspin, actually both of them have got absolutely classic G1 head sculpts for the ages. Like they're really nicely
fantastic,
blocky designs, really cool, great looking robots, very attractive robot designs. And there's a bit of fun to be had with them as well. I don't know, there was just something about them as a kid that just didn't kind of grab me at the time, for whatever reason. I didn't see the same value in them.
Yeah, look at what they had to compete with.
The innocence of youth.
In 1985.
Oh, well, exactly, yeah. So
loads of chrome on them. Loads of lovely chrome. If you get a nice one today, especially Topspin's little...
I was going to say, they're definitely toys, a bit like we were saying once about Retgar and stuff like that, definitely toys that benefit from getting a nice minty copy. If you get a worn one, and there are plenty of worn jump starters out there, normally in big lots and whatever, aren't they? But then they don't look so good. But if you've got ones with minty chrome and all of that, perfect.
But there is an element to them as well, not looking like actual Transformers, particularly at that time, because they look so different. They don't have Earth modes, and they don't transform in the same way. There's something about them. They look very simple, and they've got this just very sci-fi robot look, don't they? Whereas most of the Transformers, like, were bits of cars or jets or whatever, but that's what they look like. Whereas these don't look anything like that. They look completely removed from anything else in the toy line.
I actually think it's kind of funny, the jump starters now, because there are snobby people, who mention early Transformers versus late Transformers. I think this we touched on in a previous episode as well. But we're saying how there are people that would view only the early years of Transformers as anything halfway decent, and everything from kind of 86/87, particularly onwards, was just crap. And, people can be very dismissive of some of the headmaster designs and things like that. But actually, and I've even seen people saying it was all the stuff from Diaclone and what have you that was good. But then you have these two guys that are Diaclone toys, so they have the same pedigree as any of the Carbots or anything, and yet they have some of the most kind of made-up Cybertronian modes you can think of, and some of the blockiest designs, and they sit very comfortably in that same toy line along stuff like Sideswipe and whatever else. And I just think that they kind of buck that trend a little bit.
Yeah, they are from the previous like sci-fi era, if you like, Power Dasher kind of look, kind of thing.
They're even left out the cartoon as well, aren't they? They don't appear in there.
No, never. But they're in the comic again. They fit in, particularly Twin Twist. It's quite memorable in the comic. It's one of the wreckers and stuff. But
that's so funny because that's two groups of collectors that begrudgingly had to add G1, Twin Twist, and Topspin to their collection shelves. Like, if you wanted a complete collection of Diaclone-based toys, you had to have it. If you wanted a complete collection of like comic-based wreckers, you had to have them. And if you just wanted G1 1984 and 85 that some people just adore, you had to have them. I wonder how many people begrudgingly had to buy these jump starters, but it's not like they're expensive. So.
No, it's true. It's true.
And they're not toys you expect to ever see reissued either, are they? So they're not valuable at all. It's really strange. There's just this weird sort of cloud that hangs over them. They're almost like the forgotten black sheep of the Transformers.
It's true. I do sometimes look at some of the, kind of the different coloured versions and things out there from different countries and stuff, different licenses.
Saltman Z.
I was going to say Saltman Z is the one that often catches my eye. It's a lot of fun.
That's from Antex in Argentina, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. One day. There's one for another day. It's not one for...
And it's salt for summer salt, not like salt,
That actually had never occurred to me why that was, but that's kind of made me like it even more, I think.
Were you fans of the motorized gimmicks as a kid? Because this is going to tie into what we're going to talk about next.
It was something I wanted as a child. I think my friend bought Topspin, and I decided, well, that means I have to buy Twin Twist. So I bought it on that basis. And it's the same thing, the same reason I bought Battle Chargers. Like my cousin bought Runabout, and I thought, well, I'll get Runamuck then. And it was, those gimmicks obviously appealed. I mean, like you say, they're ubiquitous. They turn up in all the collections. Every bugger had one. You know what I mean?
Why do I feel like we're going to come on to Omega Supreme in a minute?
Oh, no, not yet. That's a little bit later. But I was just going to say with these guys, it's good that you mentioned the Battle Chargers. So I was just going to say, because they're really well remembered, but they're also equally simple, and, you know, they're not the best looking, but they're far more popular than the Jump Starters. Whereas if you look at the Jump Starters robot modes, to me, they look far prettier.
They are much prettier. Much nicer sculpting. The chrome looks beautiful on them. The stickers are colourful, even though they have pretty pants stickers, as G1 goes.
The gimmick holds up better as well.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So do you think it is that having the Earth alt mode of the Battle Chargers that makes people think this is a real Transformer, whereas you sort of look at the Jump Starters and they're more discountable?
Yeah, also look at the colours on Runabout.
Yeah.
It's like a whole different ballgame.
And of course, when their appearance in the comics as well, isn't it? It's another thing.
And the cartoon. They were in the cartoon.
Oh, yeah, they're in there, weren't
they? Yeah. One episode, I think it was.
So, but before we get to Omega Supreme, though, should we talk about the Autobot minicars being repackaged with, what did they come with, Maz?
Mini spies, friendly neighborhood mini spies, bankrupt me.
And you were going to get onto it eventually.
Yeah. Motorized Transformers, I believe they were marketed as originally.
This section is going to be called Maz Monologues on Mini Spies, I think.
Shall I make it quick?
We should just call it Maz. The floor is yours.
As long as you want, mate. We can always edit it down.
It was only because of the Great Cybertronian write-off we were doing last year that, you know, this was going to be a gap in our run of items, and I thought, well, let me get a mini spy. I mean, surely there, can't be that many.
Mini spy.
Can't be that bad. Cue horror orchestral music when I found out the scale of this task. And there's some of the toys that have held up. It's funny, the motorized gimmick has held up brilliantly over the years, but the plastic is just like 99% discolored.
Even the blue ones, all of them, isn't it?
Yeah, the blue ones, like, the white ones are dreadful.
Yeah, the white ones are bad, yeah.
But the blue ones are bad because you think you're buying a good one. And I this week, actually, I received one where I'd asked the seller, can you please check if it's discolored? It's absolutely fine, mate. It's mint. Received it. No. The top half of the car is dark blue. The arms are a different blue. It's clearly discolored.
At least with the white ones, you can tell if it's discolored just by looking at it by itself. Whereas the blue ones, you have to compare to another blue one, really, to kind of unless it's extreme. Then and they're kind of green, and then you can tell. Although wasn't there the eBay auction for the
hyper rare green version,
hyper rare green mini spy,
$10,000.
Yeah, was it 10,000? I remember it was
four figures.
It was thousands. I remember it was thousands. Hyper rare green mini spy, and it was just some seller on eBay having a giraffe. Frankly, I mean,
that is amazing.
But did you see that Grimlock as well? That
the half and half,
that rare half and half, half grey, half orange or whatever it was, Grimlock, half gold Grimlock, and it was just clearly sun damage, like down the one side. But they were trying to sell it for a packet, an absolute packet, and it was absolutely maybe chuckled to death. That dude, I was laughing about that for weeks. Just the absolute brass neck on some of these sellers.
A village somewhere is missing its idiot.
Oh, well, they know what they're doing. They know what they're. It's if you buy it, that's the problem, isn't it? But
it's the Devastator wrecking balls on this guy.
It's good for a laugh. Someday I'm going to write an article on the funniest eBay auctions I've ever seen, honestly. And those two
I've got plenty of material for you.
Oh god, honestly. so many. But the blue mini spies. It's there's two that I've got, and the one I thought was fine, but it's comparing the two, and then suddenly you're like, it's actually good.
The ones you got from me were good though, weren't they?
The ones I got from you were good. Yes, you have vetted them.
Snow covered.
Yeah, I think I can't even imagine how many I've had in the last year and a half. But what's interesting is the color of the mini spy depends on which character it was sold with. So it's interesting to see, like, the white mini spies were sold with Bumblebee and Cliffjumper, and the blue ones were sold with Huffer and I think Windcharger, and then the yellow ones come with Brawn and Gears. that might not be 100% correct from memory, but the specific colors do come with specific mini-bots. So you look at, I think the most common mini-spy of all of them is the yellow buggy, the yellow dune buggy. So you can kind of see like that must be like people buying, well, you know, whatever it was, Brawn and Windcharger or Brawn and Gears the most. So white ones are quite, and I wonder if people had already bought like Bumblebee and Cliffjumper for their kids in 1984, so they would buy that toy less in 1985 when they came packaged with the mini spies, and so there are fewer of the white mini spies around. And it's funny, like, the one I'm struggling to find the most is the blue FX1. So there's an FX1 Mazda, there was a Porsche, there was a Jeep, and a dune buggy, and these were originally Takara Mecha Warriors or Mecha Senshi, sold in really beautiful little plastic boxes that were clear all the way around. Point of sale items, you know, super cheap. I think the price tag I have on mine says 480 yen. It's just like cheap as chips. And they were sold in blue and red with stickers. And they had loads of cool stickers on them. And they were really lovely. But for Hasbro, all they got was rub signs. And that was like the rub sign thing. You know, which
that was
allegiance.
where it came from, wasn't it? Yeah.
Right. What allegiance is your little motorized transformer? And then they like adopted the name Mini Spies for them. But those are great. And it's nice to have like the card with the price tag on it, the Transformers one. It's like $3.95 or something. And it's like a lovely mini bot and a cool mini spy on it as well. Those would have been great. Just would have hoovered them up.
They're great toys. I mean, they actually make the mini bots look big, don't they? That's the funny thing about them. They're so tiny. I don't think I was prepared for how small they actually are. They're just so minuscule. Mini Spies is right. But really,
they still have rubber tires.
Yeah, great. Really, really cool. And really intricate little designs as well. Cool gimmick, little old motorized gimmick. I love them. I think they're great. Do like the look of the stickered up Diaclone.
Yeah.
They're really nice.
Not
really,
Diaclone.
really nice. Not Diaclone. Why did I say Diaclone? Well, no. But
most people do refer to them as Diaclone. It's just like the catch-all term for pre-Transformers these days.
No, absolutely right. Just a slip of the tongue. But no, do really like the look of the stickered ones, though. I think they look really, really beautiful.
Yeah, they had like window stickers and everything, like blue window stickers, stripes on the car, just little vent details on. It's amazing to think that so much would have gone into such tiny toys.
And they got animation models for the commercials, didn't they, as well?
Correct,
They did. Yeah,
Which
that
is
was
wild.
cool.
They weren't sold outside of America, were they? The mini spies?
Canada.
Canada.
Had them in Canada as well. Japan had the pre-Transformers versions, and then you get ones that are stamped Coma, and they were sold in other Asian countries, and they come in really wild colors like pink and really dark blue, and then one of them has a head sculpt that it looks like other Transformers characters. You can just tell that. And like the theory behind it is really weird. No one really knows what the deal is with them, because Coma is not necessarily a company name. It's a type of toy. It's like that motorized toy. And it was like the whole Matsushiro thing we talked about with Bandai toys, like releasing Jetfire or Macross Valkyries in other countries under other brands. It's thought that maybe Takara did this with another company name just to be able to sell these toys cheaply, but not have it affect the image of the company by selling super cheap versions with slightly cheaper plastic in other markets. So, you know, they're sold as kits or they're sold as pre-assembled like the mini spies, and they are supremely rare. I've seen 3 in my entire collecting time. And you get like the case box for Hasbro and it says Transformers Minibots with Coma car. And that Coma doesn't mean company Coma, but it means the type of car that it comes with, which is the little motorized mini spies. And credit to like the collectors who have just dug this information up. This is nothing I've had anything to do with highlighting. It's just read stuff that other people have discovered through buying rare toys and digging into the past.
Okay, so one of the most popular groups in all of Transformers are the Dinobots. And it's 1985 where they first appear. So we're all big fans of Dinobots as well, aren't we?
Absolutely. Yeah, love those toys. Love them.
A bit iffy on them, to be honest.
No, what? No, get out.
I was totally uninterested in them as a kid. Like, I would walk past Grimlock and Sludge and Snarl and all these, like Slag. Even as an adult collector, I really wanted Swoop, but I've never liked the G1 Grimlock toy. Still handling it today, it feels like a bootleg to me. It's so light, and yeah, I can't get on board with how weird it looks.
I am shocked.
What?
Snarl and Sludge are fantastic.
Sorry, just go back a step.
I'm just not into G1 Grimlock at all.
Liam, 2-person podcast from now on, yeah?
Yeah, I was going to
roll
say,
that
shall we
one
just
out, why
close his
not?
window and mute his mic? He's done.
I'm just
like
going to cut off his feed, I think, honestly. That's just...
The Double Trouble Takeover podcast.
I can't... What?
Yeah, just it's like really flimsy feeling, and the stickers, they scuff really easily.
All right,
I
the
just
stickers
don't
are
like
not...
his arms.
Yeah.
His
Don't like
legs
his
kind of feel
arms?
hollow. No, just
Don't like his
No, I
arms?
just don't like it.
elbows. Yeah.
What's wrong with his
silly,
arms?
tiny little head in the middle of this sea of
What?
chest. No, I just don't like it. But compare it to
Sea of
Snarl.
chest.
Yeah,
Sea
an
of
amazing
chrome
head
chest.
sculpt. Yeah, sea of chrome. It just gets lost even more then. It's a little
No, it's blinging.
all
mate.
in the middle of
Blinging.
it. No, I don't like it. don't like
You're
it.
wrong.
All right, it's a wrong opinion. One of those alternate. It's an alternate opinion.
It's just a wrong opinion.
Okay,
This is the classic segment, Maz's wrong opinions.
Yeah, exactly.
becoming a weekly thing.
I'm shook, genuinely shook.
Yeah, no. The first experience of a Dinobot I had was the first Transformer I bought as an adult collector. I was 18 years old. Went down to Croydon because I found out there was a collector's store in Croydon that sold old Transformers, and picked up what ended up being a Mexican version of Snarl, and I was just utterly blown away by this toy. I remember bringing it home as an 18-year-old, and my mum and dad going, "What are you doing? What are you buying toys again for? Like, why did you buy that?" And it was like £30, which nowadays, like for a boxed G1 Snarl, you'd be like, wow. But at the time, like, what are you doing? And it was beautiful. What a head sculpt. Wicked transformation. Loads of chrome, heavy die cast. It's actually quite floppy toy when you extend the legs from the waist. Even on a really nice new one, it's really floppy.
The waist is always a thing, isn't it?
The way his tail folds outwards to create those shoulder wings with the spikes on it, it's one of the most beautiful overall shapes on a G1 toy I've ever seen. And it's a gorgeous, gorgeous toy. I love G1 Snarl. And I love his Stegosaurus mode. And I always dismissed Sludge because I thought I've only ever handled crap condition Sludges. And I got a mint one this year. And I'm just like, now I'm beginning to wonder if maybe Sludge is my favorite Dinobot. Because that is a beautiful toy.
Sludge is my personal favourite. I had that kid.
What a
I
head
had that
sculpt.
as a kid. Love it. Absolutely
What
love
a
that
head
one.
sculpt.
Yeah, amazing
Beautiful.
head sculpt, amazing dino mode. Love the transformation. Love the way that the wings kind of fold in to make the body. All of that. I just think it's sublime. Love it. Love
Possibly
the way
the
hands fold
worst
up.
stickers ever.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I'm with you. So, joking aside on all your, wrong opinions and whatever, some of it does resonate, and I will. They're not perfect toys by any means, and the stickers is a legitimate gripe. I recently acquired. I say recently, over a period of years, I acquired a set of very nice Dinobots, and I love them, but the stickers are terrible, absolutely dreadful. They continue to peel off. They're ones that I have subbed some for rep labels just because it was just impossible. Honestly, they were just like the number of times you go over to the cabinet or whatever, and like some of them have just come off completely.
Oh yeah, the ones that go on Sludge's chrome, the curved part. They're just useless.
Absolutely, abominable. So that's a real disappointment with those toys. And they do wear quickly. And actually, I will say with Grimlock, there are some moulding imperfections and things on areas of that toy. It's not quite as well put together, I would say, as other examples in that subline. And Snarl is probably a good example of that as one that is like one of the best made. But it's a bit like Swoop. It feels more fragile. I think Grimlock. And actually Slag has various areas of fragility as well. I mean, like, there's a lot of Slags out there.
I think that tail is supposed to stay up. Like,
yeah.
I think his tail is supposed to stay up behind his back, isn't it? But it's just always just sags.
Yeah.
God,
I remember being so impressed by that toy though when I got it as a kid. Like the Slag, it was just became one of the at that age one of the best things I'd ever owned, because it was just. I think it was the first Dinobot I got, and it was just such a sight to see those toys.
Same.
I'd seen them in the cartoon, but seeing the toys, because they're so different, they're so shiny, and that grey.
The chrome
that
under the clear plastic.
Yeah, there's one thing I will say about those toys is that clear plastic, the kind of robotic detailing and everything, just absolutely blew my mind as a kid. Just loved it. It just added a real kind of feeling, like a real drama to them somehow. That even though they look cool with the solid gold in the cartoon, I just always thought they looked really, really nice. And it's probably why a lot of Grimlock toys over the years, new versions have sort of sought to replicate that look. even stuff like the Masterpiece toy and whatever, that they really kind of go after that, because I think for a lot of people that grew up in the 80s, that was a real kind of signature thing for those toys.
I think missing that was a big part of why I wasn't too fussed about Dinobots, because I never had them as kids, so I'd missed all of that detailing.
Oh, see, that was always like one of the most wonderful parts. It's all the technical detailing. It was like you were seeing the insides, like the inner workings of the robots and stuff. Like how that scene in Transformers the movie where Megatron gets reformatted is exciting because you see all the cogs and gears and stuff. And that's what it was always like with the Dinobots. But the Studio Series 86 toy, it's painted gold, but it has all that clear detail underneath if you strip the paint off.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
That's weird.
So it's probably there for some future repaint, But yeah, people have stripped the paint off and it's all there. It's popped up in promo pics early on as well, so that's how people knew it was there.
Do you know, it's funny because now that you mention that, I remember thinking, was there something I saw with the Studio Series version that had that? And then I was thinking, but it's opaque, so I don't know where I would have got that from. But how weird. Yeah, it must be for a later version or whatever.
Yeah, it's funny because like once I know that, it's like, as much as I love the Studio Series version, I'm a little bit disappointed it's got that gold paint to make it look more like the cartoon.
Yeah, at the risk of saying it, and it'll be an unpopular thing to say, I'm sure, for a lot of people now, but I do like that Studio Series toy a lot. I do like it a lot. But and it looks great in robot mode. Less keen on the Dino mode, but that's my thing. But I do think that the finish of it, I don't know, it shows a lot of kind of where some of the G1 toys, why they look so special. Just because of the chrome, all of that robotic detailing that you're talking about, the die cast. It's kind of the obvious thing to say. Not so much of it in the Dinobots, obviously, but some here and there. But I don't know, versus something that is just kind of plastic and very bare plastic grey finish with lots of joints and things like that. It's a really nice toy, don't get me wrong, but it just shows how different a lot of the modern toys are versus what happened in G1. And again, I think it's a whole other topic, but I just remember seeing the Earthrise Ironhide and comparing it to the original Ironhide, and I've no doubt that many, many people will prefer the design of the new toy because it's got a head, first of all, and things like that. But just the finish on the toys back then, the finish on a vintage G1 Ironhide is spectacular. The paint, the chrome, the rubber, the die cast, all of that. And I just think that there's a reason that people remember that era of toys very fondly.
We were just talking about the Insecticons. I don't think they've been bettered since G1. They're either an absolute nightmare to transform if it's a Masterpiece scale one, or they're just, looking at the Titans Return Kickback. That was a really pretty toy and a really fun toy, but it wasn't a G1 Kickback. It didn't have the chrome, didn't have that solid feel to it, lovely translucent parts. No, it was a perfect microcosm of everything that's great about toys of that era, looks-wise. Those Insecticons and Dinobots, to some of them, are the same.
There's a thing that's particularly prevalent in the Dinobots where there's this almost feel like luxury when you go back to them now compared to what you have. Like, if you look at the Masterpiece Grimlock, it feels like all of those qualities elevated and like taken onto like the next logical step. Whereas if you look at mainline toys like Power of the Primes and Studio Series, it feels like they've stripped a lot of those out to add in articulation. It feels like they've gone in a different way. And I don't know, there's just this feeling of luxury. It's like with Slag having the die-cast metal and, the toys where they've got those. It's just this, and they're so well articulated for the time as well, the Dinobots, particularly the Dinobots.
Yeah, stuff like Sludge is pretty decent.
They've got like knees. Rare G1 Transformers with knees.
Well, that's the thing is, we've all owned G1 Swoop now. Yeah. And G1 Swoop was the legendary figure for ages, and it's still top tier kind of thing that people go after first. I remember there's a guy who shows up to TF Nation who always goes up to the Space Bridge and asks, "You got a G1 Swoop this year?" And he's like, "No, don't have one yet." He's just waiting to buy one at the show instead of just buying one online. Right. But it's obviously top. Liam, you were saying a few episodes ago how that was your holy grail, G1 Swoop. So we all owned it now with all that billing that it's got. What do you guys think of G1 Swoop?
It still takes my breath away every time I see it. But I don't know how much of that is that whole story of getting it and the sort of the nostalgia, that all the memories that come with that. But even just now, if I glance around and I see it, it's what my eyes go to straight away. There's something so special about it because it feels so different from the rest of the Dinobots too, because it's so much smaller and more fragile. And it's a completely different experience in every way. So it
really
wasn't like when I first got it, it wasn't like revisiting the Dinobots, just another one. because they're all very similar otherwise.
Mhm.
This just felt like something completely different, and like I had no other frame of reference for ever.
Yeah, it's very different to the other four. I think, being honest, the first time I got it and opened it, I don't know if disappointed is the word, but certainly I was not as overwhelmed with it as I thought I might be.
Who's spouting the wrong opinions now?
Yeah, I knew I was going to come in for a
Sixo.
bit of that. He was just waiting for it. Look, don't get me wrong.
Wasn't expecting that at all. I really wasn't.
No, okay, so to kind of quantify it, I think it's my own fault for kind of building up the expectation in my head a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Because it was the only Dinobot of the 5 that I'd never seen in toy form. And as you said, it's got this very legendary status, of being an incredible thing and all of that. And I loved the other 4 Dinobots that I had. I loved them. And so for me, and I got Swoop first. So on this hunt of the Dinobots, I got it first, and it was the one that I had kept in box, whilst I hunted down the other 4. And so it was always the one that I was like, oh yeah, I've got that Swoop in that box. Yeah, I'm going to come to it eventually. And it was a process of a couple of years, actually, of hunting them down. Snarl was a real bugger to find, actually. So I think, and I did Swoop last. So I kind of kept it as like the cherry on top, if you will. So I think by the time I got to it, I was just, the expectation level had sort of been raised to sort of, I suppose, unmeetable standards. And so in that regard, the first time I looked at it, I was kind of like, okay, it hasn't rocked my world in the way that maybe I was anticipating it was going to. Do you know what I mean? But that said, on a sort of second or third or whatever glance it was, I started to kind of fall in love with it a lot more and kind of come to appreciate what it is about. There are still some major downers for me on that toy. It's hugely fragile, as we know. It's hard to stand at times in robot mode. So that's the thing. Just numerous things like that kind of fight against it a little bit. So it's definitely not a perfect children's toy by any means.
No.
Not
Not in the slightest.
But it's
even some adults need to be very careful about.
100%. Be careful as anything with it, honestly. The stickers are the same as all the other Dinobots. Not great, but it's still, yes, I agree, a very, very handsome thing, and I love mine.
Yeah, that clear beak is really cool. And the thing is, sorry to keep bringing this up. It's like I handled the Diaclone swoop once. I borrowed it to take photos. And it was amazing how much more the swoop effect hits you with that toy versus the Transformers swoop. Because it doesn't have the massive bobble on the end of the beak for safety. Yeah. So it's just got the pointed clear. And then the bottom half of the beak is chrome. It's gold chrome with all that detailing in it. And it's gorgeous. And then when the chest opens up, it's got a landing gear with an actual rolling wheel. Yeah. It doesn't just have that plastic molded wheel. And it's got chrome dino feet as well with wheels on. Not just a molded shape. So it's actually like it's a functional toy in that respect. But that was even more fragile than the Transformers swoop. And it's got the pointy wings as well, no safety, rounded features. But yeah, like I remember being really impressed with G1 swoop. Just, I thought it was gorgeous. Lovely, loved his weapons. Like he's got like rocket launchers you stick on his wings.
The launchers are cool.
I thought he was gorgeous. He's the only one that doesn't come with a gun, but then you can just plonk the rocket launcher in his hand.
Yeah. You can.
He's got his sword. I love Swoop. I can't believe it's been so long since I've owned a G1 Swoop. Now we're talking over a decade.
I do love it. Don't get me wrong. I think in terms of the Dinobots, I definitely couldn't say it's my favourite for sure. I think Sludge is hard to beat for me, and Slag I really like as well. So yeah, I think those two for me are definitely my favourites. And then probably, I don't know, probably Swoop and Grimlock might vie sort of towards the end. I don't know, but still, you're talking about 5 excellent toys that I love. So it's not really like which is worst. It's just kind of which is, less my favorite, I suppose.
Man, I've still never owned all 5 Dinobots at the same time. I've still never had the set together.
It's a real
incredible experience.
It's great. Yeah, it was a collecting moment for me for sure. Just getting all 5 of them in box was fantastic as it was. Seeing all 5 of them out of box was something else.
I need to buy a replacement Snarl because he's broken. It's one of his little spring-loaded feet. That's kind of the hinges.
Easy toy to break. Easy toy to break. Yeah, very easy toy to break. A lot, but all 5 of them are really. They're none of them. Sludge maybe is probably the most durable, I guess, of that set. But they all have things that can go very easily wrong with them. You could probably crush them in your hand if you're not too careful with them. So it is what it is.
Like a Beast Wars Randy.
Just crush that. I sent you that video
in your hands. Yeah.
There's a little Beast Wars follow up for for the purposes of the general audience, I sent Maz a video of there's a YouTube video of this dude just crushing a Randy in his hand, which I just found equal parts hilarious and horrifying, I think. But I mean, you can still buy that toy for like 10 quid sealed. So, I guess have at it. Get yourself a whole bunch of Randys.
That's where it should stay.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. If you're just going to pick it up and crush it. But still, I feel like he was doing a bit of a service with demonstrating GPS at least. So, hey ho. There were a couple of other toys I was just going to mention quickly that I think we kind of touched on briefly earlier, Perceptor and Blaster as well. We've not really given too much time to, but I just want to say that I love both of those toys, and obviously both Micro Change.
Fantastic toys.
But really, really fantastic toys, both of them. And I didn't have either of them until fairly recently, and they were always toys that I coveted. And characters that I loved as well. I mean, Blaster was super cool in the cartoon, but super prominent in the comic as well, where he was actually like a real badass in the comic, like a real kind of like Johnny Rebel type character, and very, very cool. And the toys have not disappointed in the least. Just both of those, I think, are superb. Blaster is humongous as well. Nothing prepared me for how sizable that toy is. Ridiculous.
Yeah, I first experienced Blaster as the E-Hoppy Twincast, which I only bought like 2-3 years ago. The reissue.
Was that the first time?
That was the first time I handled it, and man, it's fantastic. It is one of the only toys I will go up to my G1 cabinet and just grab out of the cabinet and play with, because it's so great to handle. Yeah. Super fun to transform. Like you said, mahoosive.
I have I showed my boy the E-Hobby Shattered Glass Blaster. Maybe like a couple of months ago or something, and it was hilarious because he was like, what does he transform into? And I was like, well, I'll show you, knowing full well that it was going to be like, what is that? Do you know what I mean? And I think he just thought it was like a box or something. And then but he was super entertained by the fact that you could press a button in the dude's chest and then like a little rhino pops out and stuff like that. And he loved all of that kind of gimmick. Very fun, but definitely perplexing for a kid today. For sure.
He's always reminded me of that Fisher-Price tape deck that like almost everyone I know had as a kid in the 80s, with the big chunky buttons, massive handle. That's what he's always reminded me of.
And an Etch-a-Sketch. It's like the two go sort of hand in hand.
Yes, that's what he is. It's an Etch-a-Sketch.
He really is. You can imagine like an Etch-a-Sketch former, couldn't you? That'd be quite a cool thing to see. But Blaster is of that ilk.
How sad is it that we never got that VHS tape Transformer that you saw in the toys that made us? Oh, that would have been just marvelous.
That would have been. I think what's also funny though about Blaster is that, of course, none of the cassettes came out in 1985, and that they were all Transformers creations, because I think, didn't we ascertain, or someone we know ascertained that the
Eject, wasn't it?
Eject was the very first toy designed for, well, maybe not designed, but produced for Transformers. Or no, actually designed, wasn't it? The patent or whatever that he was talking about? I can't remember. In 1985, that he got the patent numbers or something. I can't remember the story. We'll need to look it up for the 86 episode, I'm sure. But it's just funny that obviously they released Blaster, no cassettes, but with the functionality to do it. Because of the kind of cassette gimmick, that it was stripped out and everything from Micro Change. Kind of funny.
Yeah, well, Micro Change had the working AM radio, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
So it was a working AM radio for Micro Change with a thing that you put in there, and it came with like earphones and stuff like that.
Yeah, the radio was in the little kind of cassette piece, essentially, wasn't it? And not in the toy itself.
Right.
Although it did have electronics and stuff.
Blaster was the first Transformer I bought when I discovered eBay. It was the very first one, because I didn't have it as a kid. I don't think it was released over here, was it?
No, not over here. No.
So it was the very first Transformer I actually went back to get specifically.
Yeah, I think that's 1985. It's just those were the first toys I looked up as well. I needed a Ramjet, bought it from Digital Toys online. It was my first online purchase. First eBay purchase was Shockwave, because I wanted a 1985 Shockwave. First toy I bought in person was Snarl. It's 1985 all over. It was like so many toys, loads of which we never had, prominent in the cartoon and for you guys in the comic. And it was like, need to track these toys down as an adult collector.
They've definitely been some of my favourite toys to collect. I mean, finally getting, Jetfire, obviously we talked about, just sublime. Finally getting a Shockwave, and that for me was just a legendary collecting moment. Just opening that thing. I remember talking to you about it so much prior to purchase, because you've been through the mill a little bit trying to find a decent one. And finally,
oh my god,
yeah. Sorry to bring it up, but
I'm happy to talk about it. I think I'm ready.
The tragedies of M.A.S.K. This is what we should have a regular segment.
Yeah,
I love Shockwave as well. What a wonderful looking Transformer is. Yeah, it's bigger than every combiner you own, but who cares when it's that good? I owned a Shockwave. Like a couple of times in my early collecting. They were all great, like most G1 Transformers were in 1999 and 2000. They weren't falling apart like they are today. And then, I found this, not just any Shockwave, but this Milton Bradley released Shockwave, loose, of course. But some dude had it in his garage in France for all these years, bought it on release, and it's just sitting in his garage. He wouldn't even post it within France. He's like, nope, not going to post it. You pick it up, that's the only way you're going to have it. I was like, what am I supposed to do here? So I spoke to all the collectors I knew in France. I said, does anyone know anyone who lives near Saint-Etienne? And one dude said, yeah, I have a friend who lives there. So his friend communicated with the seller, who got this really well-priced, utterly mint loose Shockwave, perfect cable, no breakages, electronics worked. And he went to his house and he picked it up. And I was like, this is amazing, dude. Thank you so much. And then he packed it up to send it to me nice and secure. And he shipped it off. And then a few days later, he said, mate, the box has come back to me. So the good news is I have it. The bad news is it's got like tire marks on it. Something has driven over this box. And I'm moving it and I can hear like shards of glass or something inside it. And so what happened was this had fallen off the delivery van or something, or either within the warehouse, and a forklift truck had like driven over it. And then the box was just like, oh, here, mate, here's the box you were going to send. I don't know if you still want to send it, but bye. And he sent it. I said, you know what, mate, just send it. Just do it. I'm not going to ask you to give me the money back or anything. Just send it. And I still have like one part of this thing left.
Oh, man. The chest.
And I'm showing the lads now. It's just his chest with the Decepticon sticker, part of his abdomen cracked.
Heartbreaking.
And the thing is, when I got this in hand, it had all the parts, it looked like it was exploded. Like you get these exploded museum displays of F1 cars with all the bits. And I laid it out and I took photos.
I remember
the cable. The cable was perfect. The thing that always breaks. The cable, both connections, both sides, utterly perfect. The battery cover was there, undamaged. The legs extended and clicked and held in place. But the die cast at the top of them was bent. The die cast was bent. So it was the perfect Shockwave. I've never seen a better condition Shockwave before it was obliterated. And so that was the story of that. And then what happened was I bought a sealed Shockwave. Sealed in 1985. Sealed within the styro, so it had never been removed. It didn't have the outer box. And I never knew that G1 Shockwave comes with a twisty tie. There's a twisty tie that goes through around the middle of the robot, and it's tied at the back of the styro. Because you don't unseal G1 Shockwaves. Who does that? And this had the twisty tie. I never knew it existed. And I took it out. Mint as you like Shockwave. This was less than 2 years ago. I think it was a year and a half. First thing that happened, it collapsed on its legs. So it had collapsing leg syndrome out of a sealed box. And now the epoxy cable is degraded. This is a mint sealed Shockwave less than 2 years ago, and it's falling to pieces.
Yeah,
Sod that toy.
It's what we were saying, wasn't it? That all too often with some G1 stuff, you can get
just leave it in a box.
You can get it mint in box, and you can get it in seal box even, and it's still going to be no good. It's just unfortunate, but there's no guarantee of sealed being quality. I remember at the time of the shattered Shockwave, for want of a better expression, I remember that I think I sent you, because I knew that you wouldn't have seen it, as a page or what have you, or a picture of the UK comic storyline Legacy of Unicron, where Shockwave is, spoiler alert, killed by Death's Head in the future, and he's left in kind of shattered remains on the floor. So he's kind of like shot at close range by Death's Head and just kind of like shattered into pieces, and his head is like off and his chest is all shattered in very much the same fashion that your toy was laid out. And I remember sending it to you.
Maybe that's what happened to it.
And I think I was trying
Death's
to find
Head
some
is a forklift truck.
Yeah, I think I was trying to find some like humor in the situation for you or what have you. And I remember your response was just too soon. That was it. So I was like, okay, cool. Message understood. Got it. And I never mentioned it ever again. But I get
it. Was just so galling that,
of course,
like I found a perfect one. And if I hadn't asked that dude to buy it for me, this amazing specimen of a vintage Shockwave and a Milton Bradley one as well would still be perfectly intact. Would still be as good as it ever was. I had to interfere. And, I should have just taken it. Well, it was like this dude wouldn't even ship it. I should have just taken that as a sign as you're not meant to have it. Don't go like pestering 3 other intermediary people to help you get this toy. It's just leave it. There'll be others.
If it had worked out, it would have been awesome. But some oaf in a forklift decided otherwise, and that's that, isn't it? So, I'm amazed that the delivery company didn't, give you some compensation or what have you. But I guess that's all depends on how it's, how it shakes down. Isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the lesson here is sometimes loose used that is in good condition is a better bet than buying a totally unused version if what you want is to just display it. Because if I so much as tap that Shockwave in my display now, it collapses on one leg. So that was just a perennial issue. It's not an issue to do with wear or use. They were like that out of the box.
I remember with my Shockwave, I remember this was one of the things that we were talking about at the time, because the seller didn't want to extend the legs. And I was like, I ain't buying it until you extend those legs. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not getting it to discover that the legs don't hold. And so it became a bit of there was a lot of back and forth, and he didn't, I don't think he really understood what I wanted. Do you know what I mean? Which was just a photo of it stood in robot mode with the legs extended. And then I remember he eventually said, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And he took a picture with the legs extended, but it was lying down. And it was like, no. But no, hang on, we're not getting there. And it was so much back and forth. I remember I kept going to you and just like pulling my hair out slightly. Do you know what I mean? Just like we're still not there. We're still not got to where we wanted to be. But I was pleased that I held out, and actually, as it turns out, the thing does stand. So it was worth it. And I'm really happy with it. But wow, I totally agree with you though that sometimes just getting these things opened from someone that knows what they're talking about and actually can legitimately say this is fine, I think that is worth more than having a bit of tape on a box, for sure.
Yeah, and just taking a risk on an unused specimen that would have been better off being a preserved item in its package.
Yeah, and as you say, who wants to be unsealing Shockwaves anyway? Just on the off chance, it's not.
Who would do that?
Not really the game, is it? Really? So yeah, but no, Shockwave is a fun one for sure. So I feel like we also need to talk about Omega Supreme a little bit, right? Like we need to talk about him at some point tonight, because he's just not come up so far. But what a wonderful toy!
I've never owned one.
What? You need to remember that, son.
Yeah, get yourself an encore.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's got an amazing presence, honestly. Like I always thought it looked a bit janky and weird, especially with the really big G1 legs that it's got on the. It's a Toybox toy. It was Mechabot 1 originally, and in a really nice red grey color scheme.
Love that original color scheme,
which most of us may have seen as Grandstand's converters Omegatron in the UK.
That's where I saw it. I think I told the story in an early episode where I saw one at a car boot and passed on it because I was a snob, and then ran back to get it 2 minutes later, and someone had already had it away.
Damn.
Yeah. Tonight.
Yeah, Omega in person is fabulous.
It's a really
very easy to break. Really easy to break that mechanism on the legs.
Oh, I see. Oh, what the mechanism? I thought you meant the kind of plastic and whatever. But it's a funny old one because it's a heavy parts format. I mean, it's a toy that just comes apart into bits and you just reassemble it in another mode. But it's tons of fun. The tank bit in the middle is kind of the only real transforming element to it. But I really like it. As you said, I think it's got great presence in robot mode. Tons of fun in the kind of shuttle-based mode and all of that. You can swoosh around the little rocket. You can have the tank going around on the treads and all of that. And it's just got a lot of play value. It's one of those that it'll never scale with anything in terms of G1. Although it does look pretty cool with world's smallest transformers and things like that. And Micromasters and stuff, if you kind of like want a play set out of it. But yeah, I absolutely adore that toy.
Yeah, it's one definitely on my list. I think it's pretty much the top of my list now, as I've gone through all the different things I've always wanted to own, from G1 and haven't. Other than a Fort Max, it's that, and Omega's infinitely more affordable. So,
well, I'm looking at Omega Supreme, the Titan class figure in your, in the back behind you right now.
Oh yeah.
Does owning that reduce your desire to own the G1 toy at all?
No.
Okay.
No, not even slightly. They're very different, aren't they? I mean, not just physically different. It's just in my head, it's not that same toy. And I've always wanted to own that toy. And it was the first auto assembly I went to, I think it's 2012, and I was only there for a day. It was the only toy I was looking for while I was there, and I couldn't find one at the time. I could find bits at, I think it was Paul's store, maybe. There's like junker parts, but that was it.
I can imagine Omega going very quickly at TFNs or auto assemblies, like really fast, if anyone had a boxed Omega.
The Encore,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the Encore is nice. I mean, it's got a different face. But actually, I quite like the face. Mine is an Encore now. I had a vintage original and sold it to a mate of ours who I think is very happy with it. And I got the Encore, and I'm really happy with that. And just depends what you prefer. If you prefer the original kind of visor face or the kind of more slightly cartoony face, I guess. It's kind of an attempt at a cartoony face, but it's really cool either way.
I like that they went to that effort though with the Encore, just to change it slightly from the vintage.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice nod. It's another one that's like a bit like the Takatoku stuff. It's you need like a whole day to sticker it up. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of patience. Because there are some stickers that you're just like, what? Where does this go?
Yeah.
But some of it doesn't even really matter. I had this with Roadbuster. Yeah. It's not as bad as Roadbuster, and it's not as bad as Whirl and the Deluxe Insects and all of that. But it's a thing. There's just a lot where it's like it doesn't really matter where some of the stickers go. But
so there's not a right way to do those stickers. It's just like suggestions, and there's no
there's
concrete basis.
There's a couple that are heavily ambiguous, I would say, as to what the right orientation is. I did the thing that I think all three of us do, which is spend a lot of time looking at different pictures, different sources.
Yeah. Hours.
And some of them I just had to kind of go with it, really, because none of the sources would really show you what the right thing was. You're talking box pics, you're talking box art, you're talking catalog pics, you're talking various kind of sources from the time, whatever, what other collectors have done. None of it really agrees on some of the stickers on that toy, but hey ho.
Yeah, I just remember the hell of stickering Roadbuster and looking through the little instruction book and it showing stickers going over like holes and stuff. You're like, this cannot physically go here. Yeah,
that's the worst. Stickers over holes and stickers over like molded creases and things like that is the bit that I hate, when you know that you've got to fold or bend a sticker in some way that it's not supposed to go. A bit like we were saying over like G1 Primes, over his shoulder and things like that.
Yeah, that's been really tricky to do with reissue Magnus as well.
Yeah.
Or like, what about G1 Hound, where one of the stickers is basically just supposed to hover in midair? Like part of it's actually just not adhered to anything. It's like off the side of the door. I hate that.
Yeah. You've got stickers on top of other stickers on that toy as well.
Oh, you get that with Constructicons too.
You do. Which is a good segue. There we go.
Yeah,
straight You've just stickered your Walmart Constructicons, haven't you, Liam?
I did. This week, I finally managed to close that loop and actually get a set of them. And yeah, that stickering nightmare, that was that as well. And thank you so much for your pictures, Maz. They saved the day. You saved me so much time.
I spent hours trying to figure out where they were meant to go, and the best source in the end was this like cardboard Diaclone book that someone had scanned, and also just the recent Diaclone magazine thing that came out commemorating all the old Diaclone toys, but also talking about the new ones. That had some really nice photos of Diaclone construction toys, and I was like, that's where that's meant to go. So the box art was wrong, the catalogs were wrong, and it just makes so much sense, like when you see where it's meant to go. And then you realize that, oh, actually, some of those stickers are extra. Like you were just telling me, and I was trying to remember, and you're right. You just have some extra ones on the sheet because there's a rub sign there now instead of where it was meant to go.
Those photos were a godsend, and it was like, because before I'd started having a look, and it was like, oh no, there are so many, and it's so vague. And then your photos just saved the day. It was...
And it's like you always find, I think it's Bone Crusher, and like one of the stickers is on the canopy roof, and you think, no, it must go there, right? It's always gone there. Every set of Constructicons you ever see, that's where the Decepticon sticker goes. And it's actually not meant to go on there. It's meant to go on one of his arms, which is like, what? But yeah, that's where it's meant to go. It's a real funny one. And actually, like Blitzwing is another one where the stickers are always in the wrong place. There's these 2 thin stickers that you always see in tank mode, or they're on the side of the turret, and you think, where's that come from? But they're supposed to go on his wrists.
Yes.
And the only way I ever figured that out was looking at the Diaclone paperwork. So yeah, stickers on 1985 toys, man.
They're a bit all over the place, aren't they?
Yeah.
Always a drama. They're either super complicated, like the Deluxe Insecticons, or they're falling off, like the blooming Dinobots, or they're incorrect in the instructions, like the ones that you're just talking about, or they're like you get things like on the Coneheads, the kind of nipple, those ones. What a nightmare that is!
And the eyes,
the eyes, eyes.
Oh, I've been meaning to correct this. Do you remember when we did the 1984 episode? I said I had no idea who did the stickers on my G1 Transformers, and we figured like it must have been my mum or my brother. So I asked my mum about this a few days ago. I was like, do you remember? Did you ever do the stickers on my Transformers? And she said, no, you did them yourself. I was like, I did them, like as a 5 or 6 year old. And
was that traumatic?
It was just surprising. Like I don't have any recollection of doing them. But then it makes sense because my G1 Seekers from childhood, those breast stickers you're talking about, always cocked them up. They're just in such bad shape. It's wrong. It's totally wrong.
I've stickered up a few Seekers in my time, G1 Seekers, and I could happily never do another set of those boob ones. Honestly, it's just no thanks.
They're the only reissues I haven't stickered up, those Seekers. I just haven't done them.
Yeah. No. I got quite good at it in the end, even doing the ones in the little intakes and all of that. Kind of got a little method. And then the feet, the feet are quite hard to do as well. But yeah, so definitely, as you said, 1985, a weird year for stickers, it's fair to say. But that Constructicon set, is it nice, actually, the Walmart set? Because I do have it, actually, but just not.
I love it.
Never opened it. You were quite positive, weren't you? Because the Encore one is okay.
I've heard that was... I've heard that's not great.
It's not bad, but it's definitely got its faults. For sure. Not as good as the vintage toys. Or even the G2. I have the orange and the yellow G2 ones, and they feel better than the Walmart one.
That's the only ones I had as a kid. I had the yellow G2 ones that don't combine. So, but it's amazing, like how I liked them as a kid. They were fine, but knowing they were supposed to combine was always a real annoyance.
Well, they were G1 actually. Even they were tail end G1. They were 92 or 93. I can't remember. I need to look it up now.
But it's just incredible, like getting this set for the first time and having had those toys and knowing this toy so well without ever having owned it, how just incredible it was combining it and how important that was to the toys, just how central that is to everything and how different that makes them to those G2 ones I had as a kid. Yeah,
that's true. It's definitely a set that is remarkable for how it combines. I mean, they're fun individually for sure, and I actually prefer them in their vehicle modes. I think, when you see the 6 of them lined up, I love them in vehicle mode. The robot modes I think are cool as well, and I do really like them. But it's the
Bone
vehicle
Crusher.
modes. That's actually the one I was thinking of.
Hook and Bone Crusher.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Particularly
Hook is one of my
Crusher.
all-time favorite robot modes, particularly in the Transformers the movie. Whenever I see it, it just lights up. It's just something really beautiful about that design.
It is nice, but yeah, it's the combined mode that's the draw really there, isn't it? It's just so spectacular.
What a year though to get all these toys we've been talking about, and think of how many toys we haven't mentioned. Tracks and Smokescreen.
Yeah, man. Well, yeah.
Grapple.
Yeah. Tracks is a real favourite of mine.
Top tier Transformers G1 Tracks.
And And it's fun to think of Grapple, obviously, because we spoke about him briefly in the 1984 episode, because he was in the cartoon.
Right.
As Hauler. So that was 1985 in Transformers. As you can tell, it's a very long topic with a lot of toys, being as it was the year where Hasbro really escalated their product lines. We're going to cut it short here because otherwise we could be going for hours and hours. Nobody got to hear Maz talk about Smokescreen. So, we could have been here all night. So if you listen to our previous episode, and if you follow us on Twitter, you may have noticed we've recently launched a Patreon. Guys, what can people expect from our Patreon?
What can they not expect? Honestly, it's very exciting indeed. I mean, potentially you might even, if you've already signed up already, be listening to this episode earlier than anybody else in the world, or other than other patrons anyway. But that's really exciting. So you get early access to episodes. You get, I think probably the most exciting bit actually is in the top tier. You get little bonus episodes as well, kind of mini episodes or mini-sodes. I mean, we just did one for the last episode, which was Masterpiece. We did a whole other segment, which was, I think, about 25 minutes long or so, which was all about, well, it was a specific topic of what toys we thought could have been done in old Masterpiece style. And that was a really fun discussion. I loved it, actually. I was listening back to it, and really, really good. So, yeah, that, loads of bonus content. We do little bloopers and outtakes and that kind of stuff. There's also the ability to vote on what topics you want to see coming up and actually commission mini-sodes as well on the top tier. So, yeah, loads of great stuff. And you get to support the podcast as well, which, as Maz said at the start, is really very much appreciated because, as much as we love doing this, it is a side thing for us. It does take up a lot of time. So it's just kind of important to make sure that, that we can keep doing it, really.
And, we're really grateful for all the people who've already signed up to the Patreon because, we do want to do more. The episodes can't be 4 or 5 hours long. And there are often topics that we have to leave out of episodes, but we want to talk about them. We have opinions on them and we love talking about Transformers anyways, you might have noticed. So being able to offer that through Patreon gives people something more to look forward to. 2 weeks between episodes, we have had people telling us that, they're just sitting there waiting for us to do another episode, and that is amazing to hear. And so this way they can get the episodes earlier as well as the extra bonus content. So we do have stuff for people who want more. There is more. And, we're really happy with the way it's launched and the way it looks right now, but there's always the possibility of adding more stuff. And obviously, if the Patreon does well and, the sponsorship goes well, we can potentially offer even more cool stuff through that. And that's something we'd really look forward to as well.
Yeah, I think there's an argument to say that the more people that sign up to the Patreon, the more, eventually anyway, the more content we'll be able to offer.
That's right.
Yeah. And we've already had quite a few fun ideas of stuff that we'd like to do as well. So, we've got a lot of ideas. And who knows, maybe this is the way people finally get to hear us talk about Omnibots.
I thought that earlier. I thought, man, imagine it'll end up being a whole cut thing that will end up on Patreon, just us finally talking about Omnibots, the infamous Omnibot chatter that keeps getting.
We've talked plenty about Omnibots.
What I was going to say, we'll have to splice together all of the times it's been cut out of the regular episodes and just splice that together as exclusive content.
The 6-hour episode.
Yeah.
Mini-sode, yeah, right.
Indeed.
But we're very grateful for all the support we've had and all the people who've signed up so far. And yeah, where can they find it?
So it's at Patreon, I should say. I keep saying it wrong. Patreon.com/Triple Takeover. Yeah, and of course, also talking about, on a related note about sponsorship, of course, we were just, talking about TFSource.com before as well. So a little final reminder to do go ahead and check them out as well, TFSource.com. And thank you again to them for sponsoring the podcast.
So that's going to do it for today's episode. But if you want to keep the conversation going, remember you can always interact with us on social media, where we are at @triple_takeover on Twitter and Instagram, and Triple Takeover, all one word, on Facebook. And if you want to follow us directly, Maz, where can people find you?
I'm TFsquareone on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
I'm at Sixo TF on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
And I'm at Toybox Soapbox on all of those same things except for YouTube. But remember, it might be goodbye, but on Eternia they don't say goodbye, they say good journey.
I am not being the fat controller for you. I'm just telling you that right now.